Chapter 521. All right, Li Daochong grinned. The two of them were surrounded by a group of cultivators, and they were having a conversation as if no one else was present. Jiang Ronghua and the others looked at Li Daochong as if they were looking at an idiot. Did this guy have water in his brain? Or was his intelligence not developed properly, and he didn't understand the situation, so he was just playing house with that little girl? While Jiang Ronghua and the others were still in a daze, Shaoling River stretched out her hand, and a 3-inch long spirit snake flew out. A spiritual light flashed past Jiang Ronghua and the others. Nearly 20 Foundation establishment cultivators felt their necks go numb, and they were unable to move. What did you do to me?" Jiang Ronghua asked in shock. "Uncle, don't be nervous. It's just numbness all over your body. You'll recover in an hour." Shaoling River giggled as she replied. The spirit snake had already returned to the little girl's hand. This spirit snake was a meeting gift from Princess Catherine to Shaoling River. Princess Catherine saw that Li Daochong was very fond of Shaoling River, and in order to please Li Daochong, she gave a little spirit snake that she had raised to Shaoling River for her to protect herself. Cultivators below the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm were almost powerless against this little spirit snake. Those above the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm could resist the little spirit snake. Among Jiang Ronghua's group, there were 4 cultivators above the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, and one of them was at the peak stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Under normal circumstances, they would be able to capture or kill the little spirit snake. However, the moment Shaoling River released the little spirit snake, Li Daochong had already controlled everyone with his telekinesis, and they were unable to move at all. They could only watch as the little spirit snake left 2 small holes on their necks and injected venom into their blood. Li Daochong sent out a telekinesis sound transmission and asked Princess Catherine to send 2 demonic cultivators over. Soon, 2 demons entered the house. Under the instruction of Shaoling River, they hung Jiang Ronghua and his companions on a tree, lifted their butts, and whipped them hard with leather whips. After their bodies were anesthetized, Jiang Ronghua and the others couldn't even circulate their qi. They could only use their physical bodies to resist each lash. At first, he was still able to hold it in, but after a few more lashes, he could no longer hold it in and began screaming in pain. Lin Nuanyu stood by the side, dumbfounded. Even she had thought that the conversation between the adult and the child was very silly and naive. Never would he have thought that the other party was serious. Jiang Ronghua and his gang were really hung up on a tree and spanked. Each of them was whipped 20 times until their buttocks were torn apart. Then, they were dragged away by 2 demon workers in a transport shuttle and thrown to the foot of a barren mountain outside North Star City. Half an hour later, the anesthesia on Jiang Ronghua's group gradually wore off. Zhang Tun rubbed his buttocks and grimaced. "Young Master Jiang, should we get someone to kill that kid?" Jiang Ronghua's face was gloomy. Killing him would be too easy. No one in Miscellaneous Treasure Street dares to treat me like this. As he spoke, Jiang Ronghua raised his wristwatch and sent a message. About 20 minutes later, there was a flash of light in the sky. A Holy Light class commercial shuttle descended from the sky. An old man got off the shuttle. He was a Jindan cultivator. Seeing Jiang Ronghua's appearance, the old man's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Ronghua, who did this to you?" the old man asked in a deep voice. "Grandpa, you have to seek justice for your child. A tyrannical playboy came to Miscellaneous Treasure Street. I went to ask for payment from a female cultivator, but this kid had an affair with her. Not only did he refuse to pay up, he even beat me up." Jiang Ronghua's voice was stern and his face was bitter. He lowered his head halfway and paused for a moment before continuing. "Grandpa, I'm useless. I've embarrassed you." The old man glanced around. There were 18 other young people who had been beaten along with his grandson. All of them were Foundation establishment cultivators. With so many people beaten at the same time, the other party was not that simple. Otherwise, how could they stop so many Foundation establishment cultivators at once? "Ronghua, don't worry. Tell Grandpa. How did the other party catch you?" the old man asked. Jiang Ronghua recounted the whole process. A little spirit snake? The old man's expression was strange. He thought for a moment and said, "Was it silver all over, 3 inches long, as thick as an index finger, with a sword tip and a red mark on its head?" Jiang Ronghua thought for a moment and quickly nodded. "That's right. That little spirit snake did have a red mark on its head." The old man narrowed his eyes. "Red-crowned silver snake? No wonder you were tricked. That snake is extremely fast, comparable to a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator. It's slightly poisonous, and its venom has an anesthetic effect. Some beast tamer cultivators like to keep them as hidden weapons. Rich mortals will spend large amounts of money to buy these red-crowned silver snakes. With them, even Foundation establishment cultivators aren't afraid. You kids have too little experience in Jianghu and were tricked, which is why you were humiliated. This is also a lesson for you. In the future, you must always be vigilant when facing anything, otherwise you'll end up like today. Fortunately, you were facing a human cultivator who didn't want to kill you. If you were facing an underworld ghost, you would have lost your little lives today. Get up, it's just a whip on your buttocks, you won't die. Don't be like a girl who can't bear a little pain." Jiang Ronghua bitterly said, "Grandpa, we've already applied medicine, but it's not working." The old man coldly snorted. "Being bitten by a red-crowned silver snake will not only numb the body, but also the spirit meridians. When you were whipped, you had no resistance at all. They used thorny vine whips, which directly hit your body. You won't recover without soaking in spirit liquid for a few days." After hearing this, Jiang Ronghua's group all gritted their teeth. The old man took out a bottle of medicinal liquid and handed it to Jiang Ronghua. "Kid, you still have to host the auction tonight. Take this bottle of 1,000-year clear spirit liquid. It will quickly heal your injuries." Jiang Ronghua immediately took the medicine and drank it in one gulp. He felt a cool sensation in his mouth, and the pores all over his body felt indescribably comfortable. Then, the warmth in his stomach quickly spread throughout his body. The pain in his butt gradually disappeared under the gentle comfort. Soon, he felt an itchy feeling on his butt. Jiang Ronghua couldn't help but reach out to touch his butt. The torn flesh had smoothed out. Jiang Ronghua looked down and was surprised to find that his butt had mostly recovered. The scars quickly scabbed over and fell off, revealing tender skin. "Thank you, grandfather, for the elixir." Jiang Ronghua was pleasantly surprised. "What are you thanking me for? Kid, just don't embarrass me in the future." The old man said in a deep voice, "Yes, I will double my cultivation in the future." Jiang Ronghua was very obedient in front of the old man, which was very different from his usual domineering attitude on Miscellaneous Treasure Street. And tonight's auction is no small matter. There will be many cultivators with extraordinary backgrounds attending. Hurry up and go to the venue. As for the kid who hurt you, grandfather will help you deal with him. Our Jiang family is not so easy to deal with." The old man's eyes were cold. "Okay, grandfather, I will go to the venue now." Jiang Ronghua's lips curled up slightly. "Brat, who told you to be arrogant? Tonight, I will make you regret being born into this world." Although Jiang Ronghua's group was taught a lesson, Lin Nuanyu still didn't dare to leave Li Daocheng's house. "Sister, it's okay. Those guys have already peed their pants. They won't find trouble with you anymore. If they come again, Ling River will use the little snake to attack them again. Then I will hang them up and spank them." Xiaoling River waved her little fist and said. Looking at Xiaoling River's cute appearance, Lin Nuanyu smiled knowingly. "Little sister, thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Brother Daocheng. I was just using his power to intimidate others. Brother Daocheng is very powerful. If it wasn't for him beside me, I wouldn't have dared to speak like that." Xiaoling River stuck out her little tongue and said a little embarrassedly, "Mr. Li, thank you." Lin Nuanyu immediately thanked Li Daocheng. "You're welcome. I'm very satisfied with the 2 properties you found for me. Take it as an extra reward for helping you this time." Li Daocheng waved his hand and said. Lin Nuanyu smiled gracefully, but quickly lowered her head and played with her little hands. She said embarrassedly, "Mr. Li, can I stay here for the night? I'm afraid Jiang Ronghua will come back to take revenge on me." Xiaoling River had a good impression of Xiaoling River. She had been staying at shop number 18 for the past month, so it wasn't the first time she met Lin Nuanyu. Previously, Xiaoling River had followed Old Man Zhang to set up a stall. During that time, she was bored and played on miscellaneous Treasure Street while Old Man Zhang was napping. She accidentally broke a piece of porcelain that someone was selling, and it happened to be near Lin Nuanyu's agency. Seeing this, Lin Nuanyu took the initiative to pay for the compensation. Only then did Xiaoling River leave. Brother Dao Chong, can Sister Lin stay for the night? Xiaoling River raised her little head and looked at Li Dao Chong expectantly. I bought this house for you. You can stay for anyone you want. You don't have to ask me. Li Dao Chong looked at Xiaoling River gently and replied. Lin Nuanyu rarely saw a young man being so friendly to a child. Right now, she couldn't help but look at Li Dao Chong a few more times, feeling that this young man was very caring. Xiaoling River was elated to hear Li Dao Chong's words. She turned to Lin Nuanyu and said, Sister Lin, I agree that you can stay here for the night. Lin Nuanyu finally felt relieved. However, her expression, which had just calmed down, suddenly froze and revealed a conflicted expression. She looked at Li Dao Chong and said weakly, Mr. Li, I have another request. Can you accompany me to the auction tonight? I want to go. Without waiting for Li Dao Chong to reply, Xiaoling River raised her little hand. Baidu search 81 Chinese website. No advertising message. Chapter 522. Li Dao Chong had been focusing all his attention on Xiaoling River for the past month. The little girl's constitution was weak. If he wanted her to have great potential when her spirit meridians awakened in the future, now was the best time to cultivate her. She needed all kinds of elixirs to nourish her. Hearing that there would be an auction, Li Dao Chong naturally wanted to take a look. If there were any suitable elixirs, he would bid for them. So he had to go at night. Lin Nuanyu's invitation was just for one more person to go with her. Under Lin Nuanyu's nervous gaze, Li Dao Chong nodded slightly. Let's go together. Receiving an affirmative answer, Lin Nuanyu's expression relaxed. Miscellaneous Treasure Street's appraisal pavilion had started preparing the venue a few days ago. The scale of this auction would be the highest in the history of Miscellaneous Treasure Street. Many cultivators had already come a few days ago. These cultivators hadn't been invited and had all come on their own. The weakest cultivators invited were late Jean Dan cultivators. It was said that there would be several Yuanying cultivators participating in this auction. The scale of an auction didn't just depend on the level of the participants. It mainly depended on the items being auctioned. The higher the quality of the items being auctioned, the higher the level of the auction, and the more powerful the cultivators participating in the auction. This was a virtuous cycle to begin with. If there weren't enough attractive items, who would participate? If there was something they needed, then they would come. Otherwise, would they come and watch a show? If there weren't any good items, then even if Yuanying cultivators were invited, they wouldn't come. Miscellaneous Treasure Street originally didn't have such an event. This auction was the first in its history. Usually a highly competitive sales method like auctions was held in underground cities. After the war with the Rakshasa state, the Federation government invested a lot of money to promote the development of the cultivation economy. They tried to raise the passion of cultivators for cultivation as much as possible. This auction was the first Miscellaneous Treasure Street auction held by Planet North Star's local government and many other units. The joint units included North Star University, Shadow Serene Square, Cloud Jade Vestment, and Talisman Research Institute, which represented the highest level units in the Federation. Half of the auctions were provided by the government and these units. In order to attract a large number of cultivators to participate in the auction, not only were the standards of the auction items very high, the starting price was also very low, and the quantity was also very shocking. Many rare auction items would be available in large quantities. Chinning Marketplace, where Jiang Ronghua worked, was the executor of this hire. They were mainly responsible for setting up the venue. 2 hours before the start of the auction, some of the public seats were already more than half filled. Many cultivators had come to the auction early in order to grab a seat near the front. The Jiang clan was in the limelight this time, and many cultivators thought that they knew a lot of inside information. As soon as Jiang Ronghua appeared, he was surrounded. The cultivators scrambled to ask him all kinds of questions. Jiang Ronghua, on the other hand, was just an outsider. He didn't know any inside information at all. However, for the sake of his face, Jiang Ronghua pretended to give ambiguous answers to every question. Some female cultivators even threw flirtatious glances at Jiang Ronghua, hoping to get more information. Young Master Jiang, I don't know if there are any face-preserving pills in this auction. I really want one. A sexy female cultivator almost leaned on Jiang Ronghua's body and asked in a delicate voice. Although face-preserving pills are very rare, they're only a very common item in this auction. It is said that Professor Huang Ruoxuan of North Star University personally took out 3 of them for auction. The others are temporarily confidential. However, I can guarantee that as long as the cultivators come to this auction, there's a very high chance that they will be able to buy the item they want. Jiang Ronghua said in a methodical manner. As for the face-preserving pills that Huang Ruoxuan personally took out, Jiang Ronghua only heard about it from hearsay. He didn't have any definite information about it. After the female cultivator heard Jiang Ronghua's words, her eyes lit up. Her body leaned closer to Jiang Ronghua, and she whispered in Jiang Ronghua's ear, "Young Master Jiang, do you have any channel for this mistress to buy one first? In terms of price, it could be higher than the market price. If you can get it, this mistress will prepare a sumptuous dinner in room 229 of the North Star Hotel for young Master Jiang to enjoy." While speaking, the female cultivator looked straight at young Master Jiang. Her meaning was obvious to anyone who understood it. Jiang Ronghua's heartbeat accelerated. Regardless of whether he had any channels or not, he readily agreed. "Fairy Chun, you can rest assured that this Jiang will help you ask." The female cultivator, surnamed Chun, couldn't wait any longer. "Young Master Jiang, it would be better if you take this mistress to the back of the auction to have a look. The face-preserving pill is not a peerless pill. Yuan Ying is a pill refiner. As long as he is willing, he can still refine a lot of them. Let's go and buy one, okay?" The face-preserving pill was more attractive to female cultivators than any other pill. Taking a face-preserving pill could allow a cultivator with a low cultivation level to maintain their youthful appearance for a long time. Even if an ordinary person took a face-preserving pill, it could guarantee that their appearance would not change for 80 years. Not only that, the face-preserving pill could also restore an old face to its youthful appearance. The face-preserving pill had almost no other effect except to maintain a youthful appearance. But it was precisely because of this that the face-preserving pill became an immortal pill that all female cultivators yearned for in their dreams. Jiang Ronghua was completely infatuated with the female cultivator surnamed Chun. He planned to trick the female cultivator surnamed Chun into walking around the back of the auction and then deceive her with a few words. As for whether he could get the face-preserving pill, he would think about it later. He could easily find an excuse to dodge it. At this moment, there was a commotion in the auction hall. "Look, it's Beauty Ling Fu. Seeing is believing. This beauty talisman is indeed a graceful person. She is the most famous of the 2 beautiful women of the monster race. They are the Snake Woman and the Fox Woman. Beauty Ling Fu is a snake woman of the monster race. Look at her body, it's simply captivating. If I could spend a good night with this beauty, I would be willing to give up 10 years of my life." When the discussion reached Jiang Ronghua's ears, his whole body suddenly shook. He looked up and immediately saw a beautiful scenery reflected in his eyes. Princess Catherine entered the auction hall accompanied by 2 lizard men. Under the guidance of a staff member, she went up to a box on the 2nd floor of the appraisal hall. Beauty Ling Fu had become very famous in the miscellaneous treasure street, but she was not qualified enough to be invited. She only provided 3 bottles of blue radish poison, which was a rare thing. It was enough to become a mid-level item in this auction. Any cultivator who could provide a good item could enter the box on the 2nd floor of the appraisal hall. The appearance of Beauty Ling Fu immediately made Jiang Ronghua's restless heart fly away from the female cultivator surnamed Chun. His eyes were fixed on Beauty Ling Fu and refused to leave. The most terrible thing was to be compared. Before Beauty Ling Fu appeared, the female cultivator, surnamed Chun, might have been a little tempting. But when Beauty Ling Fu appeared, the female cultivator, surnamed Chen, immediately became a wildflower, making Jiang Ronghua lose interest. Young Master Jiang, don't go. Didn't you say you would take this concubine to the back of the auction hall? The female cultivator, surnamed Chun, was looking forward to it, but when she saw Jiang Ronghua suddenly leave, she quickly called out, "Let's talk about it later. I just forgot that I have to greet an important guest." Jiang Ronghua said perfunctorily and hurried to the second floor. Baidu, search Tian 81 Chinese Network O. No advertising message. Chapter 523. Jiang Ronghua went to the second floor and quickly found the room that Beauty Talisman was brought into. Standing in front of the door, Jiang Ronghua revealed a perverted expression and fiercely sniffed the remaining fragrance in the air. Not only did Jiang Ronghua investigate Lin Nuanyu, but he also knew the background of this beauty talisman. This demon woman had no background and was also a foreigner, so she was even weaker than Lin Nuanyu. Although Jiang Ronghua often visited shop number 18, there was a constant flow of people there every day, so he couldn't communicate much with Beauty Talisman. Occasionally, he would say a few words, but he would quickly be interrupted by other customers who came to ask questions. Right now, there were very few opportunities to be alone with Beauty Talisman. Jiang Ronghua had specially bribed the receptionist and told him to bring Charm Shishir into this box as long as she entered the venue. Jiang Ronghua had already tampered with this room a few days ago, setting up a few small spiritual arrays and traps inside. Apart from that, Jiang Ronghua had already arranged for people to keep watch. Zhang Tun and the other rich young masters were already in place, but they were still hurting, so they couldn't proceed according to the original plan. Fortunately, Zhang Tun was meticulous. In order to prevent any accidents, he spent a lot of money to hire a Jindan cultivator to keep watch for Jiang Ronghua. Since he couldn't get Lin Nuanyu in the day, he had to get Beauty Talisman tonight no matter what. When Jiang Ronghua came up, the Jindan cultivator followed and stood behind Jiang Ronghua. Jiang Ronghua stood in front of the door and tidied his clothes, then raised his hand to knock on the door. Princess Catherine, who had just sat down, frowned and said, "Didn't I just say that you don't have to worry about me? Go do your thing." Princess Catherine thought that the overly enthusiastic staff member had returned and was a little impatient. "Fairy, I'm Jiang Ronghua, the person in charge of this auction. There are still a few items in your room that haven't been put in. Please open the door." Jiang Ronghua casually made up an excuse. Princess Catherine lay lazily on the sofa in the room and raised her hand to signal the lizard man who had followed her to open the door. The lizard man immediately opened the door. However, just as the door opened, a fist shot out like lightning and struck the lizardman's chest. The lizard man silently fell to the ground, and the other lizard man sensed that something was wrong. Just as he was about to go over to see what was going on, his eyes flashed as if he saw a shadow slide past him. Following this, the back of his head tightened and his body went limp. All of this happened extremely quickly, and it was completed in the blink of an eye. When the door of the box opened, Jiang Ronghua activated the spirit array that he had set up in advance. The private room was immediately cut off from the outside world. Only cultivators above the middle stage of Jindan could break through the barrier of the spiritual array. Jiang Ronghua had spent a lot of money on these small spiritual arrays. He wanted to make sure that Talisman Shishir would be able to sleep with him. Princess Catherine had been following Li Daochong for a period of time, and her cultivation had increased rapidly. If not for the fact that she had been busy managing the store and cultivating wholeheartedly, she would have been at least at the mid-stage of Jindan. Although she had not reached the mid-stage of Jindan, after condensing the Yao core, she had reached the peak of the early stage of Jindan. As soon as there was movement, Princess Catherine had already sensed it. However, just as she moved, she felt dizzy and her body went limp. Princess Catherine's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, she had been poisoned. As a snake woman, It was unacceptable for Princess Catherine to be poisoned. However, even after realizing that she had been poisoned, Princess Catherine did not know what kind of poison she had been poisoned with. Who was targeting her? Princess Catherine frowned. These days, she had been carefully managing the store on miscellaneous Treasure Street and had not had any conflicts with anyone. Could it be Master's enemy? No, Master's enemies had all been killed by Master. If there were any more, they should be in the Hades. There shouldn't be any in the Federation. Many thoughts flashed through Princess Catherine's mind in an instant. At the same time, a spirit talisman was already in her hand. A level 10 ice talisman. This was specially made by Master for Princess Catherine to protect herself. Although Princess Catherine had been poisoned and her body went limp, it was not to the extent that she could not move. At this moment, it was more of a disguise. Jiang Ronghua closed the door. His heart was surging. Just looking at the graceful figure lying on the sofa was enough to make him unable to control himself. His whole body went limp and his mind went limp. Jiang Ronghua had tasted many female cultivators. However, he had never touched a demon woman. Firstly, the Federation had a protection ban for the demon woman. Secondly, the demon woman's individual strength was stronger than human cultivators. Furthermore, the demon woman was not very interested in human cultivators. Jiang Ronghua had long been drooling over demon woman. He had even thought of casually finding a pig girl. A male cultivator like Jiang Ronghua, whose mind was filled with lust, was rare in the world. Perhaps most male cultivators were very lustful. However, they were not like Jiang Ronghua, who wanted to mate with any female dog he saw. When he met a prettier one, he would immediately go crazy. At this moment, Jiang Ronghua had already thrown everything to the back of his mind. He only wanted to kiss Feng Zhe. As for the consequences, he did not care. Moreover, he had already investigated the background of the spirit talisman beauty. This kind of foreign woman, who was also a demon woman, was very easy to deal with. At worst, he would just give her more money in the end. Jiang Ronghua walked to Princess Catherine with a lustful look in his eyes. When Princess Catherine saw Jiang Ronghua, her eyes showed some confusion. She never thought that the person who plotted against her would be this generous old customer who often visited the shop. "Young Master Jiang, what are you doing?" Princess Catherine quickly regained her calm and asked. "Princess Catherine, you are too beautiful. When I first saw you, I was already unable to extricate myself from your graceful figure. We have known each other for so long. Can't you see that I like you?" Jiang Ronghua said in a mushy manner. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to untie Princess Catherine's clothes. "Young Master Jiang, it is not too late to admit it. Stop. As long as you stop immediately, I can guarantee that I will forget everything that has happened now. I will not mention this to anyone." Princess Catherine coldly stopped him. We have already come to this step. How can I stop?" "Princess Catherine, if you obediently obey me, I will not treat you badly. Moreover, I can order a batch of spirit talismans from your shop every month. You will make a lot of money." Jiang Ronghua said shamelessly. His breathing became more and more rapid. This guy did not need to take any aphrodisiac at all. His own secretions could have the effect of an aphrodisiac, causing her to fall into a state of ecstasy. Princess Catherine did not want to fall out with him, but Jiang Ronghua did not have any intention of stopping before the cliff. His face was filled with lust, 10,000 times more thirsty than a perverted scorpion. Princess Catherine's eyes turned cold. She knew that persuasion was useless. The male human cultivator in front of her was like the reincarnation of a pervert. There was nothing but lust in his heart. Rip! Jiang Ronghua did not even have the patience to slowly untie her clothes. He grabbed Princess Catherine's clothes and pulled violently, instantly tearing it apart. Princess Catherine's pink underwear was revealed. Chapter 524. When concubine Say's top was torn apart, a murderous look flashed in her beautiful eyes. If it weren't for the fact that this was an auction and there were so many people watching, Jiang Ronghua would have been a dead man by now. A few months ago, Princess Catherine was the hall master of the Blood Knife Society, one of the three major gangs in the four-ring star field. Snake women had always been insidious. However, after being subdued by Li Daochong, Princess Catherine had suffered a lot. Thus, she restrained herself and didn't dare to go against her master's will. When she was talking to Jiang Ronghua, Princess Catherine had been checking what poison she had been poisoned with. Now, she had found the result. Jiang Ronghua had actually given her an aphrodisiac. If she wasn't wrong, this aphrodisiac was called extreme aphrodisiac. It was a powerful aphrodisiac. After being poisoned, even Yuanian cultivators wouldn't be able to resist it. The killing intent in Princess Catherine's eyes deepened. No wonder she hadn't noticed it. It was actually an aphrodisiac. She had been living a relatively comfortable life these days. It was different from the time when she was on the edge of a knife. The string in her mind wasn't always tense, so she had been poisoned. Princess Catherine's monster energy struggled to suppress the efficacy of the aphrodisiac. Although she could control it, she couldn't expel it from her body. Once the extreme aphrodisiac entered her body, it would immediately integrate into her blood and organs. If she forcefully expelled it from her body, she would be seriously injured and her foundation would be damaged. Despicable man. Concubine Say's beautiful face revealed a look of anger. Jiang Ronghua tore open Princess Catherine's top and saw her underwear and white shoulders. His mind buzzed and his entire body boiled. A lustful light flashed in his eyes and his body temperature rose. He wanted to pounce on Princess Catherine. Bang! With a muffled sound, Princess Catherine's soft body moved and her long leg lashed out like a whip. Jiang Ronghua wanted to take 3 steps back, but he didn't fall down. Princess Catherine's expression froze. Her leg was full of strength. Even Jindan cultivators might not be able to withstand it. But Jiang Ronghua only took 3 steps back, as if nothing had happened. This guy's cultivation was clearly at the foundation establishment stage. What was going on? Princess Catherine was bewildered. A black light flashed in Jiang Ronghua's eyes for a moment before disappearing. However, Princess Catherine still caught sight of the black light. Something was strange. Jiang Ronghua's expression was sinister, and his saliva flowed out like water. He no longer looked like a human, and his face had turned ashen. Dark ghost. Princess Catherine was shocked. This family had been possessed. Ha! It's been a long time since I've tasted such a delicious body. Demon race, back when I ravaged you guys, that was the happiest period of my life. Demon race women are truly delicious. Jiang Ronghua let out a lewd laugh, but his voice was completely different from before. It carried a bit of emptiness and gloominess. What the hell? Princess Catherine was horrified. If it was only a low-level dark ghost, then how could Jiang Ronghua not be discovered on a second-class cultivation planet, like Planet Northstar, after being possessed? Princess Catherine looked at Jiang Ronghua's state, and the hairs on her body stood on end. A chill ran down her spine. Jiang Ronghua took a step forward and grabbed at Princess Catherine's chest. The veins on his hand were bulging, and at some point his fingernails had turned black. Princess Catherine raised her hand to block, using all her strength. With a thump, her hand collided with Jiang Ronghua's claw. Princess Catherine felt a powerful force pass through her. She flew back like a kite, with its string cut, and slammed into the wall. The spirit array that had been placed in the box had already been activated. The collision of Jean Dan's level didn't cause any damage, and there was no reaction from outside the box. The box had been isolated from the outside world. Princess Catherine, who hadn't placed Jiang Ronghua in her eyes, now felt a sense of crisis. Not to mention the fact that she was currently under the effects of the extreme aphrodisiac powder and couldn't use her full strength. Even if she were in peak condition, she might not be Jiang Ronghua's match. Princess Catherine used her telekinesis and sent a distress signal to Li Daochong without any hesitation. Princess Catherine had a restriction placed in the depths of her soul by Li Daochong. There was a deep connection between them. With just a thought, the other party could immediately receive it. Princess Catherine didn't contact Li Daochong in the beginning because she thought she could solve such a small matter and didn't place Jiang Ronghua in her eyes. Moreover, if she asked her master for help for such a small matter, then what was the use of her? Princess Catherine didn't expect Jiang Ronghua to be possessed by some kind of ghost and be so powerful. The palm strike just now was like colliding with an ancient ghost beast. Princess Catherine's blood and chi churned violently. If she had formed a Yao core, she would have been crippled just now. Although Princess Catherine withstood it, the Yao Qi that sealed the extreme aphrodisiac powder showed signs of loosening, and a lot of medicinal power leaked out. Princess Catherine's consciousness was a bit hazy. Her body became even more limp, and the way she looked at Jiang Ronghua changed. For a moment, Jiang Ronghua seemed to have become an elegant young master. That face overlapped with another face. Princess Catherine began to hallucinate. The extreme aphrodisiac powder stimulated the appearance in her mind, incessantly stimulating the most primitive instincts in her body. "Master," Princess Catherine whispered. She just saw Jiang Ronghua as Li Daochong. Princess Catherine violently shook her head. Her Yao Qi shook, and her loosened consciousness recovered. This extreme aphrodisiac powder was really powerful. It could actually control one's consciousness and make one see the object they wanted to have sex with the most, gradually breaking down the defenses in one's heart. Jiang Ronghua, who was possessed by a ghost, was extremely fast. Seeing Princess Catherine fall to the ground, he pounced like a hungry tiger, pressing down on Princess Catherine. Whoosh! A ray of light shot out. Princess Catherine didn't have much strength left to fight. Without hesitation, she shot out the Grade 10 ice talisman she had prepared. A Grade 10 talisman was enough to kill a late-stage Jin Dan cultivator. With a bang, the ice talisman hit Jiang Ronghua's chest. The temperature in the box suddenly dropped. Ka ka ka. The sound of ice freezing spread everywhere. Jiang Ronghua was instantly frozen into an ice sculpture. The box turned into an ice house. Because they were too close, and it was also a sealed space, Princess Catherine was also invaded by the ice. The area she was in also froze. However, the cold air played a positive role in keeping her awake. Her slightly blurred consciousness was completely restored by the low temperature. However, being awake didn't remove the effects of the drug. Princess Catherine's body was still limp. A wave of heat kept flowing out of her body, burning her whole body. The layer of ice around Princess Catherine actually melted. The extreme aphrodisiac powder was so strong that even a Grade 10 ice talisman couldn't suppress it. Jiang Ronghua was frozen. Princess Catherine's heart eased a little. She slowly crawled towards the box door. She had to leave this place as soon as possible. Princess Catherine had just moved her body when she heard a crisp crack. She turned around and saw a crack on the frozen Jiang Ronghua's face. Ka! Another sound rang out. The crack widened, and then it split apart. Princess Catherine's beautiful eyes flashed with panic. The Grade 10 ice talisman actually couldn't freeze this guy. He was just careless and got hit by the ice talisman. "Master, come quickly!" Princess Catherine screamed in her heart. Ka ka ka. The layer of ice surrounding Jiang Ronghua kept cracking. Ice pieces fell to the ground and scattered everywhere. On the main street of miscellaneous treasures outside the Court of Treasures, Li Daochong held Xiaoling River's hand and walked side by side with Lin Nuanyu. At this time, the miscellaneous treasure street was filled with people. Cultivators wearing all kinds of robes were rushing towards the Court of Treasures. At the same time, the Court of Treasures announcer was announcing the cultivators with invitation cards over and over again. Those invited were at least mid-stage Jin Dan cultivators and above. Most of them were Yuanian cultivators. The cultivators who had arrived at the scene earlier were all craning their necks to look in the direction of the VIP passage. Usually they could only hear about the big shots, but not see them with their own eyes, were now walking in from outside. Most of the Yuanian cultivators on planet Northstar had been invited to participate in the auction. There were also many famous people from the Federation. General Manager of Sky Shuttle, Lin Pe, has arrived. Sky Shuttle was the #1 flying shuttle manufacturer on planet Northstar. Lin Pe was a late-stage Yuanian cultivator. He was a very famous big shot on planet Northstar. He often appeared on the major radio stations and was invited to give speeches by various universities. He was still single and was a golden bachelor in the eyes of many female cultivators. When Lin Po walked into the venue, many young female cultivators screamed, "Boss Lin, I'm here, I'm here." Ah, so handsome, even more handsome and on the screen. Before the screams had even died down, the announcer's voice rang out again through the spirit microphone. Tang Group's vice president, Tang Jinan, has arrived. Planet North Star was one of the most important markets for the Tang Group. Tang Jinan was an outstanding member of the younger generation of the Tang family. He was only 25 years old, but he was already a peak Jin Dan cultivator. His future was limitless. There were rumors that the three elite regiments of the Divine Generals, Dragon Fong, Eagle, and Lion King, were interested in recruiting him. The Dragon Fong, Eagle, and Lion King regiments were organizations that young people in the Federation dreamed of joining. All young cultivators would be honored to join one of the three regiments. If they were recruited, they would become a part of the Federation's power center. There was even a glimmer of hope for them to become a member of the Divine Generals, a national treasure. Ah, it's Tang Jinan. Heavens, I can't believe I'm seeing him. He's already a peak Jin Dan cultivator at such a young age. I heard that he didn't go to school in the Federation. Instead, he studied in one of the three major cultivation empires, the Ankuan Empire. An overseas returnee is indeed different. His bearing isn't something those bumpkins in the Federation can compare to. Isn't that so? I think Lin Po pales in comparison to Tang Jinan. Although Lin Po's cultivation level is higher and his position is higher, he's getting old. He's almost 40. Tang Guangbei followed behind Tang Jinan and listened to the young female cultivator chatter. A helpless, bitter smile appeared on his old face. You guys haven't seen a truly powerful monster before. Compared to that person, we're Lin Po and Tang Jinan. You think 25 is young? You guys really haven't seen young people. Although Tang Guangbei was a member of the Tang family, and Tang Jinan was his grandnephew, so logically speaking, he should not be siding with an outsider. However, everything that had happened to Tang Guangbei on Shadow Demon Star felt like a dream to him. That man was simply too strong and too abnormal. Star Spirit Mining's chairman, Chu Jiaohua, has arrived. Tang Jinan had just gone upstairs when another important figure arrived. Star Spirit Mining was the largest mining company on planet Beichan. Its business spanned across several galaxies. Beichan's Chu family was Star Spirit Mining's largest shareholder. Chu Jiaohua was 28 years old and in the early stages of yuanying. He was one of Beichan's three young masters and a prominent figure in planet Beichan's high society. He was the dream lover of many socialites. However, Chu Jiaohua only had feelings for Shadow Serene House's Wei Ziying. Chu Jiaohua had already entered the venue, but he wasn't in a hurry to go upstairs. Instead, he stood at the door, as if waiting for someone. At that moment, Li Daochong led Xiaoling River in through the common passageway. Lin Wan had never seen such a large group of people before. She nervously followed behind. Li Daochong hadn't taken more than 2 steps when several female cultivators rushed past. One of them was in such a hurry that she bumped into Li Daochong. The female cultivator looked at Li Daochong with disdain and grumbled, "Don't you look where you're going?" She squeezed into the crowd and craned her neck to look at the VIP passageway. Shadow Serene House's director, Wei Ziying, has arrived. The announcer continued with the announcement. The first female cultivator to be invited made her grand entrance. Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 525. Wei Ziying immediately outshone all the other female cultivators. She was wearing a blue dress that accentuated her tall figure perfectly. The dress was emitting a faint light. It was one of the 3 Dharma treasures of the Wei family, the Demon Phoenix. It could withstand the attacks of a soul formation perfected cultivator. A middle-aged man followed behind Wei Ziying. He had a medium build and half an inch long hair. He was wearing a normal gray Chinese tunic suit and didn't look powerful at all. However, the energy of the middle-aged man was extremely powerful and no one dared to look him in the eyes. The weaker cultivators would tremble slightly, like a goat in front of tiger. Chu Jialuo immediately went up to Wei Ziying and said with a smile, "Zing." Wei Ziying glanced at Chu Jialuo and nodded. She didn't stop walking and walked past him. Chu Jialuo immediately felt a bit awkward. If it were someone else, he would have been furious, but there was nothing he could do in front of Wei Ziying. A few of the people who came with Chu Jialuo revealed displeased expressions. One of them spoke in a soft voice, unable to stand it. "What's so great about her? She just has a good grandpa." Chu Jialuo immediately glared at that person. "Watch your mouth. If you talk nonsense again, I'll kill you." That person was scared and didn't dare to say anything else. He lowered his head and followed Chu Jialuo to the room upstairs. There were still more cultivators who were invited, and each of them was more powerful than the last. Without Yuanying's power, he would be too embarrassed to greet them. However, most of them were the elites of the younger generation. There weren't many cultivators from the older generation. Even if there were, they were itinerant cultivators who didn't have any family background. They were invited because of their own power. The three most powerful ones also caused a stir. Former member of the Divine Generals, current Deputy Commander of the Northwest Army, Major General of the Federation, Goddess Hong Yang has arrived. When the announcer announced the name of Goddess Hong Yang, the auction room was immediately stirred. She was a member of the Divine Generals and a talented girl decades ago. She was the indisputable goddess in the minds of her generation. Yuanying was at the peak of his power and was also a core member of the Federation. However, a few decades had passed, and young people would not recognize this proud daughter of heaven from back then. However, the goddess Hong Yang had once again become the focus of the Federation during the defense of the demon subduing city that had just ended 2 months ago. The spirit vision footage of her fighting the Grand Wizard and the Ghoul army went viral on the spiritual nexus. Decades later, Goddess Hong Yang once again became a popular figure in the Federation with her own strength. After this battle ended, the Federation government summoned her back to recuperate. It was said that this fairy would soon be given a higher position. The promotion from Major General to Lieutenant General was a foregone conclusion. It was just that it had not been announced yet. Goddess Hong Yang was different from the previous ones. She did not have an entourage. She was dressed in white. She entered the passage and disappeared in a flash. Those cultivators who wanted to feast their eyes didn't see anything clearly. The chairman of the Black Tortoise Group, Yi Xiaoxiong, has arrived. While the cultivators were still regretting not being able to see Goddess Hong Yang's graceful bearing, the announcer's voice sounded again. A big shot had appeared. The Black Tortoise Group was one of the top 100 cultivation enterprises in the Shenghua Federation. It was mainly controlled by the Yi family. The Yi family had a deep foundation and was an evergreen family in the Federation. They had stood in the Federation for less than a few thousand years and had created a lot of glory. The Yi family could be found in every corner of the Federation. Although most of them were scattered and could not be considered part of the Yi family, their roots were traced back to 5,000 years ago. The Yi family was also the inheritor of the ancient divine beast bloodline. Thousands of years ago, there was once a tribulation stage immortal, Yi Qinquan. The legend of this immortal was still circulating in the streets. According to the relevant statistics, the Black Tortoise bloodline of the Yi family had a population of more than 300 million. The Yi family was a real giant in the Federation. They had a seat in the Federation's parliament, which was the core power center of the Federation. Yi Xiaoxiong was the grandson of one of the current Federation's parliament members, Yi Tsangtian. This young master had a more powerful background than the previous few young masters. At the age of 30, he was already in the middle stage of Yuanying. Whether it was his family background or his own cultivation, he was far above Luo and Tang Jinan of the Chu family. Even Wei Ziying was a bit behind. Yi Xiaoxiong entered the venue under the escort of more than 10 cultivators. His golden robe was dazzling. It was also a high-grade heaven-ranked robe. It was even better than Wei Ziying's demonic phoenix. Yi Xiaoxiong's aura was not at the same level as the others. Among the cultivators accompanying him, there were 2 Yuanying cultivators. The rest were Jindan cultivators who were not qualified to follow him at the foundation establishment level. Yi Xiaoxiong's feet were a few inches above the ground. The chi of the black tortoise was slightly released, making the cultivators around him feel like worshipping him. The blood of the divine beast was extraordinary. His aura was many times stronger than that of the normal cultivators. The standard of this auction was so high that it was a feast for the eyes of all the cultivators present. They were not from the same world at all. Other than Wei Xing, there were a few other important female cultivators present. Not long after Yi Xiaoxiong entered the box, the announcer announced another important name. The director of the Tang Group, the famous movie star Tang Xian, has arrived. Boom! The cultivators in the auction house were once again in an uproar. This was the first auction on Planet North Star's miscellaneous treasure street. It was sure to be the talk of the town for years to come. A month ago, the Polaris government had taken to the SpiritNet to promote the auction. They bragged about how good the auction would be. At the time, many cultivators had scoffed. They didn't take it seriously, thinking it was just the government trying to make money. Usually, this kind of auction would have a lot of momentum but little rain. It wouldn't cause much of a stir. At most, there would be a few good auction items to hold the fort. Later, word spread that there would be more important people participating. More than a dozen items were revealed, and the number of items kept increasing. This aroused the curiosity of the skeptical cultivators. They were convinced that the North Star government was serious about this auction. It was likely that the Federation government had strong support behind the scenes. Otherwise, the North Star government alone wouldn't be able to achieve this. Many cultivators had come to the auction house full of anticipation. But now they realized that not only was the North Star government not boasting, they had been too modest. So many important people had made a public appearance. This was something that hadn't happened in the past 100 years. Even if there had been, it had been done in secret. For example, the Black Prisons auction had never been low-level. Even a small auction would have a large group of Yuanian cultivators. A high-level auction was even more terrifying. Even deity transformation cultivators could be found there. Of course, the Black Prison was located at the intersection of the three great cultivation empires. It was on another level. But for the Federation, this auction was definitely of a high standard. The fact that Tang Xian could participate was proof of the influence of the person who had invited her. The number one female star of the Shenghua Federation wasn't someone who could be casually invited. Not only was the appearance fee frighteningly high, but if she wasn't high enough, she wouldn't show up no matter how much money was offered. However, Tang Xian had studied at the North Star University on North Star. This was her alma mater. It was only natural that she would promote the most important commercial center on the planet. Tang Xian's entrance didn't just attract the attention of ordinary cultivators. The super-rich young masters who had entered the private rooms upstairs also looked down. For them, the attraction of a superstar was far greater than that of a young lady from a wealthy family. Tang Xian had starred in many big-budget movies. She had created one beautiful and strong female cultivator after another. Many of these super-rich young masters were also her loyal fans. For example, Yi Xiaoxiong was one of them. Originally, this super-rich young master had a haughty attitude. But when he heard Tang Xian's name, he stopped and turned around to look behind him. Yi Xiaoxiong intended to wait for a while. He hadn't met the superstar of the Federation yet. Unfortunately, Tang Xian didn't come. After the superstar entered, she was escorted by the reception staff and security guards to another passage. Obviously, the superstar wasn't just a guest. She might have other work to do. Yi Xiaoxiong's face showed a touch of regret. He then turned around and went upstairs. Brother Dao Chong, these immortal brothers and sisters are so amazing. When can Lingxi be like them? Xiaoling River, who was lying on Li Daochong's back, asked with a face full of envy. Lingxi is so great. You will soon be better than them. Li Daochong laughed. Brother Daochong, although Lingxi knows that you are encouraging Lingxi, Lingxi knows herself. Lingxi will never be such a person. But Lingxi is still very happy that Brother Daochong said so. Now Lingxi is satisfied. God is good to Lingxi. Lingxi met Brother Daochong. Lingxi is very satisfied with her current life. Xiaoling River said in a childish voice. Lingxi, what Brother Dao Chong said is true. They are nothing. You will be 1,000 times better than them in the future. Li Daochong continued. Well, it's understandable to make a child happy, but there's no need to lie to her like this. A girl standing next to Li Daochong couldn't stand it anymore. She rolled her eyes at Li Daochong and couldn't help but say, Bing Bing, why are you talking to such a silly person? Let him be. It's understandable that he is fantasizing. A male companion next to the girl mocked. Ha ha. The other companions who seemed to be with the girl immediately burst into laughter. Lin Nuanyu, who was standing next to Li Daochong, wanted to find a hole to hide in. She hoped that others wouldn't think that she knew Li Daochong. This guy was too ridiculous. Yi Xiaoxiong, Wei Xing, Chu Jialuo, Tang Jinan, Tang Xian, and Lin Po were all geniuses among geniuses. They were existences above the clouds. 1,000 times better than them. This skinny little girl on his back. Dream my ass. Lin Nuanyu was very grateful to Li Daochong for helping her. But hearing him say such ridiculous things, she couldn't help but despise him in her heart. Kid, when coaxing a child, go somewhere far away. Just enjoy yourself. If you go around telling others about it, then it's your fault. A tall and sturdy young man, standing behind Li Daochong, looked down at Li Daochong and said with a frown, Jin Zhonghua. Someone recognized this tall young man and reported his name. This tall young man seemed to be quite famous. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 526. Jin Zhonghua was one of the most promising youths of his generation. On planet North Star, the Jin clan was famous for its body cultivators. There was also a late-stage Yuanying body cultivator in the clan. Among the various cultivation systems, the body cultivator was the most difficult to reach, but it was also the most powerful. Once a body cultivator reached great success, their battle prowess would reach a terrifying level, especially when it came to movement techniques and speed. Body cultivators were the nightmare of all long-range attackers. Of course, it was also a nightmare for Dark Ghost. Yuanying body cultivators could contend with a Grand Wizard. Jin Zhonghua ranked near the top of the Jin clan's younger generation. He wasn't even 30, but he was already a mid-stage Jin Dan body cultivator. He was quite famous on planet Polaris, and was often hired to act as a bodyguard. If he could raise his cultivation by another 2 levels, he would definitely be invited to attend the auction. Li Daochong glanced at Jin Zhonghua. His expression didn't change much, but he didn't say anything. He patted Xiaoling River on his shoulder. Lingxi, you need to set your sights further. Look at the people you see today. There's no need to be envious. All the cultivators looked at Li Daochong like he was an idiot. Was there something wrong with this kid's head? Jin Zhonghua, let's hurry and find a seat. The auction is about to start. If we don't find a seat soon, we won't be able to find one. A tall, skinny youth next to Jin Zhonghua pulled him aside. The reason why Jin Zhonghua was disgusted by Li Daochong's words was because he was a die-hard fan of Wei Xing. As long as someone said something bad about Wei Xing, he would be annoyed, even if it was just an indirect attack. Although Li Daochong didn't specifically mention Wei Xing, he still included her. He actually dared to say that the goddess in his heart was nothing. How could Jin Zhonghua not be angry? He even had the impulse to hit someone. However, the auction house was crowded with people at this moment, so it was impossible for them to start a fight. Jin Zhonghua glared at Li Daochong after he was pulled back by the lanky youth. Then he turned around and left. Xiaoling River said angrily, Brother Daochong, is that big idiot crazy? What do we say have to do with him? It's not like we're hindering him. Li Daochong chuckled and said, Lingxi, remember, he's not sick. It's just that he might not like our conversation. Where there are people, there will be trouble. Even if you don't provoke others, you might still get into trouble because of your actions. Don't worry about him. Let's just watch. Xiaoling River nodded her head, although she didn't really understand what Li Daochong said. But as long as it was Brother Daochong who said it, then it must be reasonable. Brother Chong, let's go somewhere else. I don't want to be too close to this stupid kid. I want to take the lead today and get what I want. I don't want this stupid kid to be tainted with bad luck and miss out on his love. The female cultivator Bing Bing, who just spoke, looked at Li Daochong with disgust and said to her companion next to her, "All right, this place is too far back. Let's go to the front." The male cultivator, called Brother Chong, nodded his head. Then the four of them looked at Li Daochong with disdain and walked away together. Xiaoling River, who was sitting on Li Daochong's shoulder, stuck out her little tongue and made a face at the four of them. Then she said angrily, "Who want to be with you guys? Go away." Hearing Xiaoling River's words, Li Daochong smiled happily, but the smile that had just appeared suddenly froze. Princess Catherine's cry for help sounded in his mind. Li Daochong put Xiaoling River down and turned to Lin Nuanyu and said, "Boss Lin, take care of her for a while. I have something to do, so I'll be back soon." Lin Nuanyu didn't think much of it and responded. She took Xiaoling River's little hand and said, "Mr. Li, you go." Xiaoling River looked confused. She didn't know where Brother Daochong was suddenly going, but when she saw that Li Daochong seemed to be in a hurry, she said sensibly, "Brother Daochong, don't worry. I'll be very obedient." Li Daochong patted Xiaoling River's little head and turned to leave. Li Daochong didn't have much contact with Princess Catherine during this time. This snake woman was very good at managing things and was very reassuring. Li Daochong even planned to weaken the restriction on Princess Catherine's soul after a period of time to give her more space to display her abilities. Li Daochong didn't expect that someone would have evil intentions and attack his people. After leaving the crowd, Li Daochong glanced around. After making sure that no one was paying attention, his figure flashed and disappeared. The two Jin Dan cultivators standing guard at the passageway leading to the ordinary private room on the second floor only felt a gentle breeze. They didn't feel anything, but they didn't know that a figure had already gone up to the second floor. Li Daochong and Princess Catherine's souls were connected. Therefore, when he received Princess Catherine's distress signal, he had already locked onto her position. When he reached the second floor, Li Daochong instantly appeared outside the private room. The Jin Dan cultivator who was standing guard for Jiang Ronghua immediately appeared and blocked Li Daochong's path. "This is a private room. Please leave." The cultivator reached out to block the door. Li Daochong glanced at the Jin Dan cultivator indifferently. "It's good for you to move aside. I can pretend that I didn't see you." Zhang Tun and the others were in the private room opposite. The pain in there made it impossible for them to stand or sit for long. They could only lie on the sofa in the private room. However, the rich young masters took turns to look outside. "Young Master Zhang, why is that brat here?" One of the rich young masters, standing inside the private room, was looking outside through the peephole. When he saw Li Daochong suddenly appear, he asked curiously. Zhang Tun ignored the pain in his buttocks and jumped off the sofa. He grimaced in pain and ran to the door to look outside. Sure enough, he saw Li Daochong standing outside the private room that Jiang Ronghua had entered. This brat came here to die. It's fine." Cultivator Wang was an assassin of the Dark Knight back in the day. He's a mid-stage Jin Dan cultivator. I don't know why this brat came here. If he doesn't know how to appreciate favors, Cultivator Wang will teach him a lesson and avenge us. Zhang Tun laughed sinisterly. Outside the private room, Wang Buiyun looked at Li Daochong with a dumbfounded expression. This brat, who didn't even have the aura of a qi condensation cultivator, actually dared to speak to him like this. Wang Buiyun smiled. His smile was very bright. He suddenly released his aura to suppress Li Daochong. A mere qi condensation cultivator dared to act rashly in front of him. He didn't even need to make a move. He just needed to release a bit of his aura to make this ant kneel and beg for mercy. In order to impress this young man, Wang Buiyun didn't hold back and poured all of his aura into Li Daochong. However, nothing happened. Wang Buiyun's expression was strange. His aura didn't work. Could it be that it was disturbed by something? Right? There will be many big shots in the auction today. There will also be tens of thousands of ordinary cultivators. In order to prevent these ordinary cultivators from being affected by the aura, the organizers must have set up some kind of spirit array. Since his aura didn't work, he would just use telekinesis to attack. Brat, your luck is too bad. My aura will at most make you feel fear and cause some psychological trauma and some internal injuries. Telekinesis is different. I will take it easy and not let you die. However, it's hard to say whether you will become an idiot or not. After thinking about it, Wang Buiyun's face showed a touch of coldness. He had once stayed in the dark night. Killing people was just a game for him. An invisible telekinesis shot out from Wang Buiyun's sea of consciousness. Oh! At that moment, Wang Buiyun's throat made a muffled whisper. His eyes were wide open and full of fear, as if he had seen a ghost. However, in just half a second, all the light in his eyes dissipated. Wang Buiyun's expression froze, and he was frozen in place. Li Daochong didn't even look at Wang Buiyun. The door of the box in front of him slowly opened under the influence of qi. Suddenly, a cold mist came out of the door. Li Daochong flashed in, and the door was immediately closed. Zhang Tun, who saw everything through the peephole in the opposite box, was dumbfounded. He didn't know what had happened. Why did Cultivator Wang let that brat in? What's going on? They know each other? F***CK, I have a spy. Isn't this going to be exposed? But how does that brat know Beauty Talisman? Zhang Tun was stunned and couldn't figure out. If Cultivator Wang and that brat were in cahoots, then wouldn't he be in danger? He couldn't stay here for long. Zhang Tun immediately wanted to leave. Of course, he knew what the consequences would be if Jiang Ronghua's actions were exposed in such an important place. Right now, he couldn't care so much. Zhang Tun just wanted to run away. However, Cultivator Wang was standing outside the door. He couldn't leave at all. Zhang Tun was burning with anxiety. At the same time, Li Daochong entered the box where Princess Catherine was. The inside was like an ice cave. Princess Catherine was lying on the ground. Jiang Ronghua stood next to the sofa with a fierce face. His body was stained with water. When he saw Li Daochong come in, his fierce face showed surprise and surprise. "It's you," Jiang Ronghua blurted out. Li Daochong examined Jiang Ronghua. This guy was completely different from when he saw him during the day. A thick death aura wrapped around Jiang Ronghua. There was a gloomy aura hidden in his eyes. It wasn't something a human should have. Was he possessed by an underworld ghost? Li Daochong wasn't sure. Planet Northstar was located in the Federation's inner circle. It was a second-class cultivation planet. Yuanning cultivators could see it everywhere. How could an ordinary underworld ghost possession escape the discerning eyes of so many cultivators? Even if they were careless, there were detection arrays everywhere on planet Northstar. Wherever people gathered, underworld ghosts would have nowhere to hide. How could Jiang Ronghua not have been discovered when he was possessed? Even stranger was that Li Daochong hadn't noticed anything wrong with Jiang Ronghua when he met him during the day. Jiang Ronghua's eyes flashed with a dark light. "Brat, there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to walk. There's no door to hell, but you insist on barging in. This afternoon, I let you go. I wanted to let you live a few more days, but since you're courting death, I won't have to go looking for you." Li Daochong activated his telekinesis. He immediately detected the unusual death aura on Jiang Ronghua's body. It was distant and majestic, clearly different from ordinary death aura. This death aura was very similar to the aura of the demon Li Daochong had plotted against on 13 Spectre, but they weren't exactly the same. His soul force was very strong, but his aura was weaker. It was a demonic will. It was similar to the demonic will in store number 18, but much stronger. His main body-soul consciousness was still there. He wasn't a mindless demonic soul. Li Daochong's expression changed. He looked at Jiang Ronghua from indifference to greed. It was like he had been starving for a long time and suddenly saw a delicious meal placed in front of him. Chapter 5:27. Master, be careful. There's something strange about this guy. Princess Catherine's body was soft, and her breathing was rapid. The drug was slowly eating away at her consciousness, but even in this state, she didn't forget to warn Li Daochong. Li Daochong didn't respond, as if he didn't hear her. Jiang Ronghua narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Beauty, The way you call me master was so ecstatic. This sovereign likes it. 3,000 years ago, when this sovereign led an army of 1,000,000 to sweep through the demon race, the demon women gave this sovereign a feast. Bah. Princess Catherine spat. Jiang Ronghua retracted his smile, and the lustful light in his eyes intensified. Princess Catherine's stubbornness only stimulated his desire. All right, it's time to enjoy the delicacy. Kid, this sovereign will let you live a bit longer and let you enjoy a good show before you die. Jiang Ronghua's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. After speaking, Jiang Ronghua took a step forward. His movements were so fast that Princess Catherine didn't even see it clearly. Jiang Ronghua clawed at Li Daocheng's head. The nether ghosts loved to attack the top of the human skull because they could directly pluck out the soul from there. Pa! Before Jiang Ronghua's claw could land, it was caught by a large hand. Jiang Ronghua was surprised. At the same time, he exerted more force, but the hand didn't move at all. Li Daocheng looked at Jiang Ronghua indifferently and grabbed the latter's wrist. A stream of spirit energy quickly entered Jiang Ronghua's body. What? Jiang Ronghua was shocked as he felt the spirit energy enter his body. He looked at Li Daocheng in disbelief. Who are you? Nether demon, who was hiding in Jiang Ronghua's body, felt a trace of danger and couldn't help but ask. A notification came from Li Daocheng's mind. Hades' pervert. He absorbs women's aim to strengthen his demon soul. He must mate with a female. His mind is filled with lustful thoughts. All his actions are for mating. Li Daocheng probed, and the hot blood upgrader immediately gave an explanation. As expected, Li Daocheng had expected this, but he wasn't sure what this nether demon was. Now it was clear. He was actually a sex fiend. So there really was such a thing in the world. The Hades ghost was ever-changing, and there were all kinds of strange things. Anything negative in the world could be found in the Hades. No matter how hard Jiang Ronghua tried, he couldn't shake off Li Daocheng's grip. At this moment, he realized that something was wrong. This nether demon pervert had been hiding in Jiang Ronghua's body for over 20 years, patiently waiting for the right opportunity. Using Jiang Ronghua's identity, he continuously absorbed the essence of human women to strengthen his devil soul. After more than 20 years of accumulation, the demonic soul had recovered 1/10 of its original strength. Although it couldn't be compared to its peak state, its safety was greatly guaranteed. If Jiang Ronghua released all of his death chi, his combat power would not be weaker than that of Yuan Ying's peak cultivators. He might even be stronger than most of the grand wizard ghosts in Rakshasa State. He might not be invincible in the Shenghua Federation, but it was almost impossible for anyone to kill him. Even a soul formation grand cultivator would not be able to kill him. However, this nether demon pervert didn't expect that a random kid would be able to subdue him. Of course, nether demon pervert Jiang Ronghua didn't think that the kid in front of him could really defeat him. Right now, he was only afraid that the spirit array in the room wasn't strong enough, so he couldn't use his full strength. Today was a gathering of heroes. If he was exposed, he would be in real trouble. However, the kid in front of him was much more powerful than he had imagined. If he didn't use his true chi, he might not be able to defeat him. Jiang Ronghua chanted. Suddenly, a black curtain descended, and the entire room was plunged into endless darkness. It was like a boundless starry sky. A look of horror appeared in Princess Catherine's eyes. She had never seen such a strange scene. The ghost that possessed Jiang Ronghua's body was probably not ordinary. Li Daocheng was slightly surprised. This nether demon pervert's dark arts were even faster than the cherry blossom gauze. Kid, no wonder you weren't afraid when you sensed my aura after coming in. So you were hiding something. Even I was fooled by you. I thought you were just a little ant in the chi refinement realm. I didn't think that you were pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. However, do you really think you were a tiger? In front of me, even if a soul formation grand cultivator like you comes in person, it's nothing. Back then, I fought against 3 cultivators at the peak of the soul formation stage, and I still killed 2 of them. In my fiend world, I have nothing to worry about. Haha. Jiang Ronghua laughed. Is that so? Show me how fearless you are. Li Daochong looked at Jiang Ronghua with a faint smile. Since you want to die so much, I will satisfy you. Jiang Ronghua's aura continued to rise as a terrifying death qi surged toward him. Princess Catherine felt a bone-chilling coldness. Her heart trembled violently, and she felt an inexplicable sense of fear. It was as if she had seen something extremely terrifying. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, Princess Catherine couldn't hold on any longer. Her entire body collapsed to the ground, and she couldn't breathe. Her entire body trembled. Endless fear enveloped her. Jiang Ronghua exerted more force with his hand, trying to shake off Li Daochong. However, the hand that was caught still didn't move an inch. Ugh! Jiang Ronghua's eyes turned into 2 small black dots. What was going on? Is this what you mean by having nothing to worry about? Li Daochong licked his lips and asked in return. You. Jiang Ronghua's confidence was gone. All that was left was confusion and anger. Damn it! After cursing, Jiang Ronghua's other hand turned into a black light and stabbed toward Li Daochong's chest. Slap! That hand was also caught. This time, Jiang Ronghua didn't stop at all. He suddenly opened his mouth and stuck out his tongue like a snake. Disgusting. Li Daochong frowned. He let go of his hands and jumped back, dodging the long tongue full of mucus. Jiang Ronghua broke free. His face was gloomy. He quickly chanted a few strange words. In the dark environment, 2 huge bats flew out and flew toward Li Daochong. Li Daochong's eyes flashed with blue-gold light, and 2 lightning bolts shot out. Slap! The 2 huge bats were instantly annihilated by the lightning bolts. Jiang Ronghua's head was covered in sweat. He looked at Li Daochong with a somewhat panicked expression. In his own demon domain, this brat was actually fine. Release your strongest demon soul, Li Daochong said indifferently. Jiang Ronghua stared at Li Daochong. After a few seconds, he said, As you wish. After saying that, Jiang Ronghua's body suddenly changed. His body became taller and bigger. His skin wrinkled, and more than 10 tentacles appeared in front of his chest. After a while, the nether demon form was completed. More than 10 tentacles shot toward Li Daochong like 10 pythons covered in withered snake skin. Master, be careful. Princess Catherine called out weakly. Her eyes were filled with fear, but it seemed that it was too late. Li Daochong was entangled by more than 10 tentacles and couldn't move. Ha ha, brat, you are really arrogant. Let me see what you are to be able to be so calm in front of me. Jiang Ronghua was delighted when he saw that he was able to control this young man. Under Jiang Ronghua's control, more than a dozen tentacles wrapped around Li Daochong, forming a cocoon-like object made of tentacles. Princess Catherine saw this scene, and despair appeared in her eyes. It has been a long time since I absorbed the life force of a human soul like this. After eating you, my soul power will definitely increase greatly. Ugh, Jiang Ronghua said, with a perverted expression. But halfway through, his expression stiffened and a groan came from his throat. The more than 10 tentacles wrapped around Li Daochong flashed with electricity. Then, the tentacles softened and fell from Li Daochong's body to the ground. One of the tentacles was grabbed by Li Daochong. Young lightning moved around the tentacle, making sizzling sounds. Jiang Ronghua felt that his demonic soul was surrounded by some kind of suction force. It was sucking his demonic soul out with an unstoppable force. Jiang Ronghua resisted with all his might, but the effect was minimal. His soul power was disappearing little by little. No! Jiang Ronghua shouted in fear. Princess Catherine stared blankly at the sudden turn of events. She didn't see Li Daochong do anything, but Jiang Ronghua fell into panic. Li Daochong waited for so long for this pervert to release his soul power. Li Daochong really didn't dare to enter Jiang Ronghua's body to capture him. After all, this was a nether demon dead soul, an existence that surpassed soul formation. Li Daochong didn't want to take the risk, so he waited until now. Once he caught it, how could Li Daochong let go? This was a super feast. It would be a waste not to eat it. His soul power was slowly eroded by Li Daochong's divine sense, spirit qi, and yang lightning. The hot-blooded upgrader shone in Li Daocheng's mind, seemingly very excited. Even if it was just a little bit, it was still much stronger than a normal nether demon. His soul power was constantly being converted into spirit chi. This time, there was no kill notification. There was only the constant conversion of his soul power. The spirit chi in Li Daocheng's body was rapidly increasing. Jiang Ronghua's nether demon form shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye, gradually returning to his original human form. The tentacles extending from his chest gradually withered and turned into residue. The endless darkness around him quickly scattered, and the room returned to its original appearance. The demon domain disappeared. Under the effect of the demon domain, the cold air produced by the ice talisman also disappeared, and the room returned to its original appearance. No, no, spare me. Exalted immortal, spare me. Only one tentacle remained intact from Jiang Ronghua's chest. It was the one that Li Daocheng had grabbed. The tentacle became Li Daocheng's straw, constantly absorbing the demonic soul power from Jiang Ronghua's body. It was like walking on a cold street in winter and holding a cup of delicious milk tea with a straw in both hands. Every time he took a sip, from his mouth to his stomach, there would be an indescribable warmth and moisture. Not only did it drive away the cold, but it was also a feast for the mouth. In stark contrast to Jiang Ronghua's terrified expression, Li Daocheng's face was full of enjoyment. This was the first time he had converted his soul power like this after obtaining the hot-blooded upgrader. When a nether demon became powerful enough, it could convert part of its soul power into spirit chi without killing it. Just as Jiang Ronghua thought he was about to die, he suddenly heard urgent knocking on the door. Dong, dong, dong. Ronghua, are you in there? It was his grandfather, Jiang Taiyan's voice. Jiang Ronghua's expression of despair disappeared as if he had seen a life-saving straw. He shouted, "Grandfather, I'm in there." Outside the room, Jiang Taiyan's old face was gloomy. Behind him were the bosses of the cultivation companies that sponsored the auction, as well as a government official and his daughter from the Four-Ring Star Zone. These bosses were important clients of Jiang Taiyan, and he was personally receiving them today. The Four-Ring Star Zone official was an honored guest of Jiang Taiyan's old friend, Jiang Tai, and was preparing to expand the Chinning market to the Four-Ring Star Zone. This official would play a crucial role. In addition, Jiang Taiyan intended to introduce his grandson, Jiang Ronghua, to the official's daughter. If they could form a marriage alliance, it would be much easier for the Jiang family's Chinning market to enter the Four-Ring Star Zone. But just as Jiang Taiyan went up to the second floor, Zhang Tun suddenly ran down and whispered in his ear, "Grandpa Jiang, hurry up and go to room 222 on the second floor. Jiang Ronghua seems to be fighting with someone inside." When Jiang Taiyan heard this, he was furious. Which son of a bitch had the guts to fight with his grandson? Although there were honored guests present, he couldn't just ignore his grandson. Jiang Taiyan had no choice but to greet his guests. He had planned to ask them to wait a moment. But the official from the Four-Ring Star Zone wanted to take a look around, so he suggested he go with Jiang Taiyan. Jiang Taiyan couldn't refuse, so he led his guests to room 222. Behind Jiang Taiyan stood a father and daughter. If Li Daocheng saw them, he would be very surprised. He recognized the father and daughter. The father and daughter stood at the back of the group, looking around curiously. "Dad, these past few days on Planet Northstar have been an eye-opener for your daughter. Planet Qiyang is nothing compared to this place. The difference is too great." Huang Jiran's pretty face was filled with admiration as she spoke. Her pair of big eyes were looking at the luxurious corridor. Every item here could be sold for a sky-high price on the Scarlet Sun planet, but here, they were just ordinary items. Huang Yuelong nodded. "Jiran, I brought you out to see the world. In the future, Planet Qiyang will not be your home." Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 528. Huang Jiran's face was filled with longing. Compared to Planet Northstar, Red Sun Planet wasn't even worth mentioning. It couldn't even be considered a rural village. It could barely be considered a mountainous area. If she could develop on a cultivation planet like this in the future, her life would be much better than on Red Sun Planet. Man strives for higher ground. Water flows for lower ground. This was a law that had never changed since ancient times. Huang Yuelong's heart was also filled with longing. Compared to his daughter, he wanted more. The purpose of his visit to planet Northstar was to find a good home for his daughter. The Jiang family was a good choice. The Huang family on Red Sun Planet had always been a government official. Almost half of the family's direct descendants held positions in the Federation government. Among them, the one with the highest position was Huang Yuelong's second uncle, Huang Tianming. Huang Yuelong's second uncle was tactful and good at socializing. At the same time, he also had some ability and was a psyche cultivator. Although his cultivation was not high, it was not bad. Huang Tianming's career in the government was smooth sailing. Over the past 50 years, he had climbed up the ranks. 5 years ago, he was transferred to planet Northstar as mayor. On planet Northstar, he was a mid-level official. On Red Sun Planet, being a mayor wasn't a big deal. But on planet Northstar, it was different. After all, it was a second-class cultivation planet. It was an extremely important cultivation planet in the Federation. Its rank was far higher than Red Sun Planet. Being a mayor of a city with a population of over 10 million on planet Northstar was almost as important as being on Red Sun Planet. Huang Tianming and the Jiang family had always had a good relationship. The Jiang family's Chining marketplace had more than 30 marketplaces in Northstar City under Huang Tianming's jurisdiction. It was the largest of the 100 or so cultivation cities on planet Northstar. Jiang Tai and Huang Tianming had known each other for decades. Huang Yuelong and Jiang Tai and had gotten together through his second uncle, Huang Tianming. Because of this relationship, Jiang Tan warmly welcomed Huang Yuelong when he came to planet Northstar. A few days ago, Jiang Tai had taken Huang Yuelong and his daughter on a sightseeing tour. Over the past few days, Jiang Tai had been full of praise for his daughter, Huang Jiran. He repeatedly said that having such a granddaughter-in-law would be a blessing for the Jiang family. Huang Yuelong had been an official for 20 years. He naturally understood Jiang Tai's meaning. If Huang Jiran could marry into the Jiang family, it would be exactly what Huang Yuelong wanted. A second-class cultivation planet's family was naturally much more powerful than the families on the Red Sun Planet. The patriarch of the Jiang family was an early-stage Yuanian cultivator, an unimaginable existence on the Scarlet Sun Planet. Although the two sides did not mention this matter, there was only a layer of paper left untouched. Both sides had the same intention. As long as the Jiang family proposed marriage, Huang Yuelong would immediately agree. The combination of the two families was the most perfect combination in the Shenghua Federation. Now that Huang Jiran had married into the Jiang family, Huang Yuelong was confident that his career would be smooth sailing. At the very least, there would be no more obstacles on Red Sunday. There was even a good chance that he would be transferred to a high-ranking cultivation planet like Northstar to take up an important position, just like his second uncle, Huang Tianming. Just as the father and daughter were admiring the magnificent second floor of the appraiser hall and looking forward to a beautiful future, they suddenly heard a shout coming from the box. "Grandpa, I'm inside." This shout naturally came from Jiang Ronghua, who had been scared silly by Li Daochong. The former underworld demon no longer had any prestige left. His face was full of horror and fear, and he almost peed in his pants. Jiang Ronghua looked at Li Daochong like a mouse that had seen a cat. This young man was too scary. He could actually absorb his devil's soul bit by bit. When did a human cultivator cultivate such a terrifying cultivation technique? In just a short while, more than half of the perverted devil's soul power had been absorbed. If it continued, Jiang Ronghua's soul would dissipate. When Jiang Ronghua heard Jiang Taiyan's voice, he let out a heart-wrenching howl. As for his dignity, he had already thrown it to the back of his mind. He was about to die, so how could he care about that? This howl shocked the heavens and earth and made ghosts and gods weep. It was 100 times sharper than the cry of an innocent person who had been wronged and imprisoned. When Jiang Tai heard Jiang Tun say that someone wanted to beat up Jiang Ronghua, although he was angry, he was not very anxious. He only thought that it was caused by the impulsiveness of young people. He thought that no one on Miscellaneous Treasure Street would really dare to do anything to Jiang Ronghua. After all, the Jiang family still had a reputation in this area. Jiang Taiyan thought that would at most be a battle of words and that Jiang Ronghua would only suffer a little. However, when he heard Jiang Ronghua's howl, Jiang Taiyan's old face turned ashen. It was as if he could already see the scene of Jiang Ronghua being beaten up inside. If it weren't for the distinguished guest standing behind him, Jiang Taiyan would have kicked the door open directly. If he's inside, then open the door. Grandpa is here, don't be afraid, Jiang Taiyan said in a deep voice with psychokinesis. This sound wave attack made the hearts of the few bosses of the cultivation companies standing behind Jiang Taiyan jump. Jiang Taiyan's cultivation seemed to have broken through recently. These bosses had known Jiang Taiyan for a long time and knew that he was a mid-stage Jindan cultivator. However, the sound wave attack just now was thick and solid. If Jiang Taiyan had not deliberately controlled the direction of the sound wave, they would not have been able to withstand it. It seemed that he had already reached the late-stage Jindan level. Li Daochong was happily absorbing the sound wave. At that moment, a faint light flashed in his pitch-black eyes as he looked at the screaming Jiang Ronghua. In fact, Jiang Ronghua had not been possessed. Instead, he had been possessed. Furthermore, he had been possessed a long, long time ago. This person had died long ago. The soul in his body was not human. However, this nether demon had possessed Jiang Ronghua's body when he was very young. Therefore, it had directly integrated into Jiang Ronghua's young soul. In fact, this nether demon's demonic soul had almost disappeared back then. It was a little similar to the remnant thoughts in shop number 18. However, it was a little luckier. Before the main body's consciousness disappeared, it found a carrier, which was the young Jiang Ronghua. This kid's soul was of the Yin attribute and lacked yang fire. It was the best carrier. The demonic thoughts directly refined Jiang Ronghua's soul and instilled the demonic thoughts in it. Therefore, Jiang Ronghua was not a pure nether demon. Therefore, he could cultivate like a human and release spirit chi. However, a demonic soul was hidden in the depths of his soul. This mode was extremely hidden. Even Yuanine cultivators could not detect it. This was similar to Li Daochong's hot-blooded level-up device. The difference was that the hot-blooded level-up device did not seem to have a consciousness and did not attack Li Daochong. The two complemented each other. On the other hand, the demonic thoughts were very aggressive. They had to kill the host and completely turn the physical body into their carrier. Li Daochong thought that if he completely absorbed the demonic soul, Jiang Ronghua would definitely die. The sudden appearance of people outside the private room made things a little complicated. If there was no one, after Li Daochong absorbed Jiang Ronghua's demonic soul, he would burn Jiang Ronghua's physical body into nothingness with yang fire. No one would know. Even in the appraisal hall, Li Daochong could deceive everyone. After that, he would not know anything. No one would think that it was him. Even if they did, it would be fine. He could just pretend not to know. What could they do to him? However, Jiang Ronghua's scream had already spread out. Moreover, the person outside was Jiang Ronghua's grandfather. This made things a little complicated. It would be very troublesome to kill Jiang Ronghua now. Of course, with Li Daochong's current strength, it was not a big deal to kill him. However, if the reason was not good enough, it would waste a lot of time. It might even cause him to kill more people. If his grandson was killed and his grandfather did not go all out, the entire Jiang family would become enemies with Li Daochong. There would be a lot of things involved. Li Daochong was not afraid of the Jiang family. He was just afraid of trouble. He finally had a few days of peace and did not want to cause more trouble. Tang Xian had just sent Li Daochong a message, asking him where he was. Li Daochong replied that he was at North Star University. Tang Xian then sent him an invitation to participate in the appraisal hall's auction as her male companion. If Jiang Ronghua was killed, things would definitely blow up. Was he going to exterminate the Jiang family in front of so many people? If the Jiang family really deserved to die, Li Daocheng would dare to exterminate the Jiang family in front of the entire Federation. However, Jiang Ronghua was possessed. Everything could not be attributed to Jiang Ronghua. The Jiang family would be even more innocent. If he was impulsive and caused the human race to kill each other for the sake of a nether demon. Li Daocheng was never one to be blinded by greed. Of course, he needed to be decisive in killing, but he also needed to have a brain. He couldn't just go on a killing spree full of hostility. That would make him no different from an idiot. Baidu searching 81 Chinese network. No advertising message. Chapter 529. Jiang Ronghua couldn't be killed for now. Li Daocheng frowned and increased the speed at which he absorbed Jiang Ronghua's soul energy. Jiang Ronghua felt empty, as if his body had been hollowed out. His terrified expression became even more intense. Plop! Jiang Ronghua directly knelt in front of Li Daocheng. Exalted immortal, please spare me. Just treat me as a fart and let me go. As long as you let me go, I will not be your enemy. Just treat it as if nothing happened today. In the face of life and death, the nether demon was terrified. Back then, he had found this vessel with great difficulty. He had worked so hard to stabilize his soul energy today. He was about to be completely absorbed. At that time, his soul would scatter and nothing would be left. This was 10,000 times more terrifying than death. It was truly disappearing. Even the great demon Lord Hades would not be able to revive him. Jiang Ronghua was burning with anxiety. His grandfather was already outside. Why hadn't he kicked the door open yet? At this moment, he didn't even have the strength to shout. Begging for mercy was just a delaying tactic. In truth, he didn't have much hope. The young man before him was so terrifyingly strong. Naturally, his temperament was also very stable. A cultivator with such a cultivation would not be affected by the emotions of the outside world. Once he made up his mind, even 8 horses would not be able to pull him back. Just as Jiang Ronghua was in despair, Li Daocheng said, "It's fine to let you go. However, you have to prepare 30 million elementary spirit stones tomorrow afternoon and deliver them to my door. You know where I live." Jiang Ronghua was stunned. He didn't expect that begging for mercy would work. He quickly said, "Sure. As long as Exalted Immortal lets me go, I will personally deliver the 30 million elementary spirit stones tomorrow afternoon. I will not go back on my word." When Jiang Ronghua said this, an imperceptible light flashed in the depths of his eyes. However, he didn't take his words seriously. He had to escape this calamity first. As for Li Daocheng, he also didn't take Jiang Ronghua's words seriously. He was just stalling for time. Li Daocheng had already locked onto Jiang Ronghua's soul imprint. Even if Jiang Ronghua fled to the ends of the earth, Li Daocheng would be able to find him instantly. He wouldn't kill him today. After the auction ended, Li Daocheng would find a suitable time to kill him. Jiang Ronghua's soul energy was extremely weak. It was only equivalent to a Qi refinement cultivator's. He was no longer a threat. Li Daocheng pulled his hand slightly, and the last tentacle connected to Jiang Ronghua's chest turned into dust and disappeared. Jiang Ronghua's expression relaxed, as if he had just been pardoned. His life was finally saved. He lowered his head and gasped for breath. His eyes flashed as he looked at the ground. The soul power that he had painstakingly recovered was gone just like that. This debt would not be settled so easily. Bang! The runes? Demonic soul S's, spirits Daos. It, the S spirits. Its souls. But now Li Daocheng was in the middle stage of yuanying. If he wanted to level up, he would need a huge amount of spirit. After absorbing so much, Li Daocheng didn't feel anything other than the spirit becoming a little more vigorous. He was still far from leveling up. When Jiang Taiyan opened the door, he was ready to fight. However, the situation inside was different from what he expected. There were only 3 people in the room. In addition to his grandson Jiang Ronghua, there was another man and woman. The man looked to be in his 20s. When the door opened, he was standing beside the sofa. The woman was sitting on a chair. Her face was a little red. As for Jiang Ronghua, he was standing on the other side. This scene was far beyond Jiang Tai An's expectations. There was no conflict at all. Ronghua, are you okay? Jiang Tai asked. I'm fine, Grandpa. Although Jiang Ronghua was still shocked, his face had returned to normal. Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be the backstage manager? What are you doing in the guest room? Jiang Tai asked, but his old eyes were scrutinizing his grandson. Based on what Jiang Tai knew about his grandson, he knew that the boy was being held hostage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so scared. Grandpa, this is my friend. I'm here to give him a brief rundown of today's auction. Jiang Ronghua replied smoothly. Li Daochong glanced at Jiang Ronghua. This nether ghost was nether ghost. He could lie without batting an eyelid. Big brotherly. As the grandfather and grandson spoke, a clear cry of surprise came from outside the door. Huang Juran looked at Li Daochong in surprise. She never expected to run into Li Daochong in the middle of an auction on planet Polaris. They hadn't seen each other since their last meeting. Later, Huang Juran heard some news about Li Daochong, but it was all in bits and pieces. All she knew was that Li Daochong was a student, but she didn't know where he went to school. Huang Juran learned this from her friends on Planet Red Sunday. She also knew that Li Daochong's strength was unfathomable. He was likely at the peak of Foundation establishment, perhaps even at the early stages of Jin Dan. Huang Juran had special feelings for Li Daochong. If she hadn't met Li Daochong, she would have been dead. It was Li Daochong who discovered the abnormality in her body and saved her life. There was no question that Li Daochong was Huang Juran's savior. Later, in the underground city's black market arena, Li Daochong had revealed his astonishing strength. Huang Juran had no shortage of young talents. She came from a good family, and the young people she met were all from the upper echelons of Planet Red Sunday. But Huang Juran had never met someone like Li Daochong, who relied on his own strength to make a name for himself. Almost all of them relied on their families. Perhaps she was tired of seeing mediocre people, but when Li Daochong appeared, Huang Juran's eyes lit up. She was a young girl, and she fell in love with Li Daochong. But after the black market arena, Huang Juran lost contact with Li Daochong. She tried to contact him, but even she couldn't get in touch with Li Daochong. All they said was that when Li Daochong wanted to find them, he would appear. Huang Juran felt that they didn't want to reveal anything about Li Daochong. In the end, Huang Juran had to give up. Months passed, and although she stopped looking, she couldn't get rid of that tall figure in her heart. But after this period of time, Huang Juran felt relieved. She felt that she and Big Brother Li didn't belong in the same world. She didn't deserve him. She put this Big Brother in a place in her heart, and it would stay there forever. No one could take it away from her. Huang Juran never dreamed that when she wasn't looking for him, Li Daochong would appear in front of her without any warning. He hadn't changed at all. He looked exactly the same as when they first met. He was still wearing the same green martial attire. There was a hint of tranquility in his plain appearance, at least in Huang Juran's eyes. If there was a change, it would be that he was more handsome than before. Huang Juran's eyes became misty. She didn't know why, but when she suddenly saw Li Daochong, she was a little excited. Big brotherly. It attracted the attention of everyone inside and outside the box. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, including Li Daochong. When he saw that it was Huang Juran, Li Daochong was also surprised. Then, a gentle smile appeared on his face. Juran, long time no see. Huang Juran nodded desperately. She didn't care about the gazes around her. She squeezed into the box and ran in front of Li Daochong. Big brotherly, after we parted last time, I lost contact with you. Why didn't you contact me? Huang Juran looked at Li Daochong with a wronged expression. Being stared at by the girl's resentful eyes, Li Daochong felt a little embarrassed. He seemed to have promised to treat her to a meal, but he didn't. It wasn't that Li Daochong didn't think of Huang Juran, but he had too many things to do. He didn't have time to care about other things. During the time on Scarlet Sun Planet, Huang Juran was one of the few friends that Li Daochong acknowledged in his heart. Li Daochong scratched his head. His face was actually a little red, like a teenager who had done something wrong. He smiled apologetically. Sorry. Not long after that, I left Scarlet Sun Planet and went to a faraway place. That's why I didn't contact you. Huang Jiaran's slightly pouted mouth immediately disappeared when she saw Li Daocheng's shy expression. Big brother Li, you look so cute when you apologize. Huang Jiaran laughed. In the blink of an eye, she forgave Li Daocheng. Haha, is that so? Li Daocheng smiled awkwardly, but he was sweating in his heart. He was the Thunderblade true monarch, but he actually became overcautious in front of a little girl. Of course, this was also because Li Daocheng had said something wrong first, so he felt a little apologetic. The others were a little confused. Jiang Tai was even more confused. Although Jiang Ronghua said it was fine, Jiang Tai still put this unfamiliar young man on the opposite side. Jiang Ronghua might have said it was fine because he was afraid. Since Huang Jiaran knew this kid, the situation became strange. Director Huang, is that kid Jiaran's friend? Jiang Taiyan asked Huang Yuelong tentatively. If he was a good friend, as a father, Huang Yuelong would definitely have heard of him. Jiang Tai, and had to confirm the depth of their relationship. Huang Yuelong looked at Li Daocheng with a surprised expression. When he heard Jiang Taiyan's question, he nodded and said, Yes, Mr. Li is Jiaran's friend. Mr. Li? Jiang Taiyan's old eyes moved slightly. Huang Yuelong's address was a little thought-provoking. With Huang Yuelong's status, not everyone could be addressed as Mr. Li. This kid looked to be around 20 years old. Huang Yuelong was obviously older than him, but he was willing to call him Mr. Li. Surnamed Li, Jiang Tai quickly searched through the information in his database, but he could not find any impressive family with the surname Li in the Federation. He could not help but ask, Director Huang, is this young man a descendant of some big family? Huang Yuelong shook his head and said, No, he's just strong and a little famous on planet Qiyang. When he heard this, Jiang Taiyan's doubts disappeared. Planet Qiyang was just a fourth-class cultivation planet. A little fame was only useful on that planet. Outside of planet Qiyang, who would care? On planet North Star, it was even less worth mentioning. If he was not a descendant of some big family, then there was nothing to be proud of. Jiang Taiyan's eyes flashed with contempt. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 530. Jiang Ronghua heard every single word of the conversation between Jiang Taiyan and Huang Yuelong. His fear of Li Daocheng immediately disappeared. This kid's aura did not have any obvious changes. Even when he attacked just now, Jiang Ronghua did not sense any strong spiritual energy. However, he was sure that this kid had used some special method to hide his aura. His cultivation was definitely not as simple as it seemed. To be able to absorb the power of his demonic soul, he must have cultivated some strange technique. The human race had developed for nearly 100,000 years, and there were all kinds of techniques. It was not strange for some powerful techniques to appear. Jiang Ronghua estimated that this kid's cultivation was around the late gene dance stage. He had been too careless this time. No wonder this kid did not rush to make a move after entering the private room. Instead, he kept encouraging him to use his soul power. Thinking that he had fallen into a trap, Jiang Ronghua was filled with regret. A sinister look flashed across his eyes. He was now equivalent to a cripple. It was impossible to rely on his own strength to deal with this kid. Right now, he could only use his identity as a human to deal with this kid. If he could take this kid's cultivation technique for himself, he would be able to absorb his soul power. Then, wouldn't his future cultivation be like building a ladder? He would be able to quickly recover to his peak. As he thought about it, a sinister smile appeared on the corners of Jiang Ronghua's mouth for a fleeting moment. He continued, Jiran, is he your friend? Huang Jiran's gaze did not leave Li Daocheng. She nodded slightly and responded without even looking at Jiang Ronghua. This action made Jiang Taiyan a little unhappy, but he did not show it on his face. Jiran, since he's your friend, how can you arrange for him to be in a normal private room? Let's go. I will bring you to the VIP room. Jiang Ronghua did not mind Huang Jiaran's indifference. However, when he turned around, his expression became even colder. Jiang Ronghua had heard some information about his marriage from his grandfather. It seemed that the family was very satisfied with Huang Jiran. However, Jiang Ronghua did not take this matter to heart. This kind of marriage was nothing more than a marriage between two families. However, the nether demons were very possessive and jealous. These were their innate emotions. Jiang Ronghua did not care about Huang Jiran because women were just accessories to him. They were his personal possessions. Huang Jiran's attitude towards this kid made Jiang Ronghua so angry that his lungs were about to explode. If not for the fact that he had lost all his soul power, he would have gone berserk in front of everyone and killed this adulterous couple. Jiang Tian wanted to say something, but after hearing his grandson's words, he did not know what to say. He looked at Jiang Ronghua reproachfully. "You are so heartless. Can't see that their relationship. And your grandfather was prepared to send this kid away. And invite him." Li Daochong said indifferently. Then he turned around and walked to the sofa as if there was no one around and sat down. Ignoring the people behind him, he picked up the teapot on the coffee table and poured himself a cup of tea. He took a sip. "Good tea. Serve, 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 serve." The ancient cultivator's secret language. Jiang Tai'an's face, which had just calmed down, turned green once more. A mere brat from a rank 4 cultivation planet dared to be so arrogant. There were so many seniors present, but he didn't even greet them, but he actually chased them away. Jiang Tai'an was angry, but he could not say anything. Huang Yuelong and Huang Jiran knew this kid. It was not appropriate for them to fall out with him. Jiang Ronghua was embarrassed. He did not expect this kid to reject his good intentions. Jiang Tai and glanced coldly at Li Daochong. When he turned around, a smile instantly appeared on his old face, and he said to the CEOs of the cultivation companies, "I've kept you waiting. Let's go. This Jiang will take you to the VIP box." He was about to leave when he heard Huang Jiran's voice. "Big brotherly, I will go with you." Huang Jiran finally saw Li Daochong again. How could she leave so easily? "Jiran, today's itinerary has been arranged. You want to catch up with Mr. Li?" Another day, Huang Yuelong said in a low voice. "Dad, you can go." "I won't go." Huang Jiran refused. "Jiran, there are important things to do later. Don't be willful. Besides, Mr. Li is not here to play. You will distract him." Huang Yuelong raised his voice slightly. He felt a little embarrassed that his daughter did not give him face in front of so many people. Huang Jiran was about to speak when Li Daochong's telekinetic voice sounded in her mind. "Go. Don't make things difficult for your father. I will come to you after the auction." Huang Jiran was happy at first, but she soon felt disappointed. She reluctantly pouted. She had just sat down when she stood up again and followed Huang Yuelong out of the room. Huang Yuelong was worried that his daughter would be stubborn and insist on confronting him. He was relieved when he saw her walk out of the room. Jiang Tai'an was unhappy that his future granddaughter-in-law said that she wanted to stay. However, Huang Yuelong's insistence made Jiang Tai'an very satisfied. He then walked to the other side of the corridor. They entered the passage on the 3rd floor. Jiang Ronghua followed Jiang Tai, and closely for fear of being left behind. Although he estimated that Li Daochong was not very strong, he did not dare to face him alone. As soon as they left, the door of the room slowly closed. "Master, I feel very uncomfortable." As soon as the door closed, Princess Catherine's rapid breathing sounded in the room. She could no longer suppress the effects of the drug in her body. Her consciousness was completely blurred. Li Daochong had noticed that Princess Catherine's condition was not right when he entered the room. However, he did not expect it to come so soon. Li Daochong had just turned around when a dazzling white body threw itself at him. Princess Catherine had taken off all her clothes. Although it was not the first time he had seen it, Li Daochong was still dazed for a moment. A trace of evil thoughts flashed through his mind. Li Daochong's eyes suddenly flashed with a blue-gold brilliance, and he instantly recovered his consciousness. The fragrance emitted from Princess Catherine's body was not necessarily strong. It actually affected Li Daochong's consciousness. In this moment of absent-mindedness, Princess Catherine's delicate body hugged Li Daochong like an 8-clawed spider. Her soft body was tightly pressed against Li Daochong's body. Her soft and supple bosom was pressed against his chest. Princess Catherine's body was boiling hot. Her charming face was flushed red. Her pair of beautiful eyes were blurred. Her cherry lips pouted as she welcomed Li Daocheng's mouth. Ping ping. An electric current flowed. Princess Catherine's body stiffened. Her small mouth stopped 3 inches away from Li Daocheng. Li Daocheng stretched out his hands and placed them on Princess Catherine's smooth back. Spirit energy surged into Princess Catherine's body. In less than 10 seconds, the medicinal power of the extreme aphrodisiac powder was dissolved by Li Daocheng's powerful spirit energy. The blurriness in Princess Catherine's eyes disappeared in an instant. Her beautiful eyes became bright. She looked at her master's face in confusion. Then, she panicked and quickly got down from Li Daocheng's body. Timidly standing to the side, she said in a panic, "Master." Li Daocheng waved his hand. "You were drugged. It's not your fault." Without waiting for Princess Catherine to react, Li Daocheng had already disappeared. In the room opposite room 222, Zhang Tun and the other rich young masters did not leave. After informing Jiang Taiyan, Zhang Tun felt much more at ease. No matter how strong that kid was, he could not be stronger than the Jiang family. After all, Zhang Tun and the other rich young masters were people with some family background. After Zhang Tun's initial fear, he calmed down and bravely walked out of the room. He pretended to greet the Jin Dan cultivator that he had hired and then left as if nothing had happened. However, after Zhang Tun went out, he realized that the Jin Dan cultivator was very strange. He did not react at all when he spoke to him. His eyes were dull and his pupils were dilated. Zhang Tun probed with his telekinesis. The Jin Dan cultivator's spiritual sea was in chaos. It was obvious that he had suffered a telekinesis attack. Zhang Tun immediately understood that the Jin Dan cultivator did not know that kid and had been plotted against by him. Zhang Tun then went downstairs to find Jiang Tai and to inform him. That was how the scene had happened. At this moment, the rich young masters surrounded the motionless Jin Dan cultivator and fiddled with him, but there was no reaction. Young Master Zhang, could this exalted immortal be dead? One of the rich young masters guessed. Don't talk nonsense. How could a Jin Dan cultivator die so easily? That kid must have used some powerful poison to knock this exalted immortal unconscious, Zhang Tun scolded softly. Although he said that, Zhang Tun's heart was beating faster and faster for no reason. The golden core stage cultivator that he had hired was in a very strange state at this moment, as if he was really dead. He really is dead. The rich young masters continued to study the Jin Dan cultivator's condition. Suddenly, a calm voice came from behind them. Zhang Tun reacted quickly. When he heard this voice, his first reaction was to turn around and run out of the room. However, no matter how hard he tried, the door handle did not budge. Zhang Tun turned around in a panic and looked at Li Daocheng. "What did you get in?" Li Daocheng pointed at the door. "There." Zhang Tun looked at the door, then looked at Li Daocheng. A chill ran down his spine. He screamed in his heart, "Ghost! Big brother, it has nothing to do with me. It was young Master Jiang who coveted beauty talisman's beauty. We're just his lackeys," Zhang Tun said, almost crying. Zhang Tun used his imagination to its limit. This was the only reason he could think of Li Daocheng saving Beauty Talisman. It was most likely that Beauty Talisman knew this guy. "It seems that I didn't hit your butts enough at noon." Li Daocheng glanced at Zhang Tun's buttocks. Zhang Tun and the other rich young master's buttocks tightened as they recalled the scene at noon. Their faces were filled with fear. "Big brother, I was wrong. I was really wrong." Zhang Tun panicked and did not know what to do. Li Daocheng acted as if he did not hear him. He walked in front of Zhang Tun and flicked his finger. A ball of golden fire shot out. Boom! The Jin Dan cultivator, surrounded by the rich young masters, was instantly engulfed in flames. In the blink of an eye, he was burned into gas, leaving nothing behind. Zhang Tun and the other rich young masters looked at this scene, dumbfounded. It was only now that they realized what kind of person they had provoked today. The Jin Dan cultivator was killed in the blink of an eye. Thud, thud, the rich young master's legs turned to jelly. They could not stand. They knelt in front of Li Daochong and said in unison, "Exalted immortal, please spare our lives." They knelt down one after another. Their hands were on the ground, and their heads were deeply buried as if they were worshipping a god. I've placed restrictions on your bodies. Forget everything that happened today, and you can live in peace. If any one of you spills the beans, your organs will rupture and you will die. Scram! A cold voice came from the depths of the rich young master's consciousness. They did not dare to disobey and repeatedly said yes. After that, there was no movement. After a while, Zhang Tun gathered his courage and looked up slightly. He did not see anyone. He looked around, but that person's figure was nowhere to be seen. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. M. Chapter 531. Li Daochong didn't place any restrictions on Zhang Tun and the others. He just wanted to scare them. These guys were not much different from ordinary people, so they were not worth his time. What he just showed them was enough to shock them. They didn't dare to have any thoughts of resistance. If they did, they would be greeted with death. Li Daochong was more focused on his own cultivation and development. He didn't want to get involved in other matters. Li Daochong left the room of Zhang Tun and the other rich young masters and didn't return to room 222. The main purpose of his visit today was to buy spirit medicine for Xiaoling River. In the past month, Li Daochong had read a lot of famous ancient books and asked old Ghost Zhang some questions. He also did a complete examination of Xiaoling River's constitution. Li Daochong was surprised to find that Xiaoling River had a hidden spirit meridian. If this constitution wasn't discovered, she would be mistaken for a disabled person when her spirit meridian awakened at the age of 16. Hidden spirit meridian, as the name suggested, meant invisible spirit meridian. The 9 spirit meridians in the body were all hidden in the 4 limbs, the top of the head, the feet, and the back of the body. At the same time, they were scattered without any pattern. Even soul formation cultivators couldn't find any clues. However, the hidden spirit meridian was more powerful than the Xian heaven spirit meridian. The disadvantage was that the hidden spirit meridian had a 99% chance of not being discovered, and they would be disabled for the rest of their lives. The hidden spirit meridian was extremely difficult to find. In the history of human cultivation, there were only 3 cultivators with hidden spirit meridian. All 3 of them became extremely bright stars in the history of human cultivation. However, the most recent one was from 30,000 years ago. She was also a female cultivator named Chang'e. She was known as the Fairy of the Moon. There were historical records that recorded her to the late Mahayana stage. After that, there was no news of her. Some of the ancient books written by later generations speculated that Chang'e ascended to the celestial realm and became an immortal. Of course, all of this was just speculation. In the spirit realm, the most powerful cultivators were Mahayana cultivators. However, it was more difficult to cultivate to the Mahayana stage. After so many years, there were less than 1,000 Grand Ascension cultivators in the spirit realm. The population base could no longer be accurately measured. It was almost infinite. With the support of such a huge population base and a huge amount of resources, in the past 100,000 years, only a few hundred Grand Ascension stage cultivators had appeared in the entire spirit realm, which was enough to prove just how difficult it was to reach the Grand Ascension stage. 3,000 years ago, the Hades had swept through all the races in the spirit realm and occupied 90% of the spirit realm at lightning speed. The fundamental reason was that during this period of time, the number of Grand Ascension stage cultivators in the spirit realm had plummeted. Without these godlike existences, the nether ghosts and nether demons immediately became lawless and destroyed more than half of the spirit realm. In history, there were 3 hidden spiritual vein cultivators, and all of them had cultivated to the Deshang stage. From this, it could be seen how heaven-defying the hidden spiritual pulse was. Xiaoling River was the carrier of the hidden spiritual pulse. How could Li Daochong not be moved? Suddenly, he had a strong desire to cultivate Xiaoling River. Back then, Xiaoling begged Li Daochong so much, but he did not take her as a disciple. Firstly, he did not have time at that time, and his strength was not enough. Secondly, Xiaoying's talent was limited. It was uncertain whether she could even cultivate the 9-split saber technique. Li Daochong was naturally not very interested. However, Xiaoling River was different. As long as this girl's spiritual vein awakened, she could become a Yuanian cultivator before the age of 20. There was even a slight chance that she could reach the soul formation stage. That was quite terrifying. However, Xiaoling River's hidden spiritual pulse was unstable. Li Daochong went to Wei Beitong and asked a lot of questions about it. After reading the 10,000 Kingdom Medicine Encyclopedia, he roughly understood that Xiaoling River's hidden spiritual pulse was a heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse. It was naturally incomplete. This kind of hidden spiritual pulse accounted for 80% of the people with hidden spiritual pulse. Of the 3 people in history, the first 2 had perfect hidden spiritual pulse and were not incomplete. The last one, Chang Yi, was similar to Xiaoling River's situation. She had a heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse. Therefore, Chang Yi could only cultivate to the tribulation passing stage. However, at that time, there was a West King Yao Lao who was very skilled in refining medicine. Later generations thought that the West King Yao Lao was a medicine immortal who descended from the celestial world. The West King Yao Lao refined the elixir of immortality. Chang Yi's dual cultivation partner, Ho Yi, killed the Sun King in a battle against the Sun Empire. He made a great contribution in battle. The West King Yao Lao rewarded Ho Yi with the elixir of immortality. Ho Yi gave the elixir of immortality to Chang Yi. After the latter swallowed it, the innate, incomplete, hidden spiritual pulse was repaired. Then, she could cultivate again, reach the Mahayana stage, and ascend to the celestial world. Of course, the records of the elixir of immortality were exaggerated by later generations of cultivators. They thought that it did not match the facts. Chang, it did exist in history, and there were more detailed records of her life. The only doubt was where she went. In fact, all the Mahayana stage cultivators in history disappeared. After reaching the Mahayana stage, they would appear within 5,000 years. After 5,000 years, they would all disappear without a trace. Regarding the traces of Mahayana stage cultivators, I won't explain more and get back to the main topic. The only chance to repair the heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse was to wait until the age of 16 before the spiritual pulse awakened. Even if the great, all-embracing immortal descended, he would not be able to repair the heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse. Although the heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse was still very heaven-defying, the upper limit would be reduced. It would be impossible to reach the early tribulation passing stage. The heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse was born incomplete and could never reach the peak. Xiaoling River was only 9 years old. Li Daochong still had 6 years. It would be too late to reach the heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse when he was 16 years old in the 7th year. It was actually not difficult to repair the heaven-deficient hidden spiritual pulse. It was just that the probability of it appearing was too low, so it was not valued. Many methods have been lost. Li Daochong learned of 2 methods from Wei Beitong. One was to refine the 9-transformation heavenly pill. Many cultivators thought that this spirit medicine was the elixir of immortality that Chang Yi had swallowed back then. In fact, it was a very useless and deceptive spirit medicine. It could only be said that the 9-transformation heavenly pill that Chang Yi had obtained back then was the original version. Its medicinal power was pure and naturally much more powerful than the current one. However, calling it the elixir of immortality was obviously an exaggeration. The name of the 9-transformation heavenly pill sounded very impressive, but in fact, it was only the name that was impressive. Its effect was very simple. It was not very useful for cultivators to take it. Only some special groups could treat it as a treasure. After taking the 9 transformation heavenly pill, one had to go through 3 transformations in order to completely absorb its medicinal power. The so-called transformations were to cultivate to the peak of the chi refinement realm. When one was about to break through to the chi condensation realm, they had to disperse their cultivation and cultivate again. 9 transformations in a row were 9 transformations. Each time, they could absorb a portion of the medicinal power and dissolve it in the body to repair the defects in the body. Some cultivators were born with disabilities. For example, those who had only awakened 5 spirit meridians were considered defective among cultivators. If one wanted to awaken a 6th spirit meridian, they could take the 9 transformation heavenly pill. However, they had to cultivate again 9 times. Although the 9 transformation heavenly pill was very effective, this kind of deceptive process made this miraculous spirit medicine of little value. It was indeed valuable, but it was very troublesome to realize. The alchemist who had refined the 9 transformation heavenly pill was scolded badly by later generations. He was known as the foolish bird perfected lord in history. For others, cultivating again 9 times was extremely painful and torturous. There was even a high chance that problems would occur midway and they would not be able to continue cultivating, or they would give up after taking too long. Another possibility was that they would never be able to make a comeback before they had grown. Therefore, if it was not for those cultivators who had been humiliated and were determined to endure hardships, no one would take it. However, for Li Daocheng, it was not a problem for a mere chi refinement cultivator to cultivate again 9 times. Whether it was cultivation resources or techniques, Li Daocheng could provide Xiaoling River with an endless stream of resources. Li Daocheng was confident that he could help Xiaoling River complete all the steps within a year. However, the prerequisite was that he had to get the 9 transformation heavenly pill. In fact, before one's spirit meridians were awakened, they could still cultivate. However, the speed of cultivation was extremely slow. Body cultivators started cultivating from a young age. A long time ago, body cultivators were known as martial artists or martial artists. At that time, it did not matter whether the spirit meridians were awakened or not. Children of 4 or 5 years old had already started practicing martial arts. However, the speed of cultivation before the age of 16 was very slow. Those who could reach the 7th or 8th level of the chi refinement realm were extremely talented. As long as there was an auction, the Shadow Serene workshop would be included. In the afternoon, Li Daocheng asked Zheng Jiao for some insider information. Zheng Jiao was the Shadow Serene workshop's manager in the North Star region. She was the person in charge of this auction. In short, wherever Li Daocheng went, Zheng Jiao would follow. As long as it was within the Shenghua Federation, the Shadow Serene workshop had branches or offices. Zheng Jiao did not have to worry about not having a place to go. Zheng Jiao told Li Daocheng with certainty that there would be a 9 transformation heavenly pill at this auction. Besides the 9 transformation heavenly pill, there was another way to make up for Xiaoling River's hidden spirit meridians. That was to consume star tears all year round. Drinking 1 liter a day for 3 years would suffice. Although star tears were not a rare item, they were not everywhere. It was not difficult to get a few milliliters of them. As long as one had enough spirit stones, one could buy them in the underground city. However, 1 liter a day for 3 years would be more than 1,000 liters. That was a terrifying amount. After accumulating so many star tears, the value would be terrifying. One had to know that this thing was only sold by the milliliter. A second-class cultivation planet could produce about 10 milliliters of star tears in a year. A third-class cultivation planet could produce 1 milliliter in a year. A fourth-class cultivation planet could produce 1 milliliter in 10 years. The reason why star tears were not a rare item was that they were a renewable cultivation resource. It was just that the production was extremely small. There were also star tears for sale at this auction. According to Zheng Jiao, there would be no less than 10 liters. The amount was already very large. However, it was meaningless to Li Daocheng. Therefore, Li Daocheng was aiming for the 9 transformation heavenly pill. Li Daocheng secretly went from the second floor to the hall on the first floor. He returned to the spot he had just left. However, Lin Nuanyu and Xiaoling River were nowhere to be seen. The corners of Li Daocheng's eyes twitched slightly. Where were they? Just as Li Daocheng was about to use his powerful divine telekinesis to search, he heard a scream. "What are you doing?" It was Lin Nuanyu's voice. "Let go of me." Then came Xiaoling River's panicked voice. "Don't you two have eyes? This is young Master Xiang's seat. Who let you two sluts sit here?" Finally, there was a man's scolding voice. Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 532. When Li Daocheng heard the word bitch, his eyes turned cold and murderous. If it weren't for the fact that there were tens of thousands of cultivators present, Li Daocheng would have stomped on the guy who said those words and killed him. On the left of Li Daocheng, about 10 or so rows away, a man in a khaki-colored Daoist robe grabbed Xiaoling Si with one hand and Lin Nuanyu with the other, roughly pulling the two ladies up from their seats. Xiaoling Si's flesh was being grabbed, and the pain made the little girl anxious. She opened her mouth and bit the young man's hand. The young man reacted quickly. When he saw the little girl opening her mouth to bite him, he immediately let go and glared at her. "Which family is this stupid girl from? Are you a mad dog?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Xiaoling River's face. Lin Nuanyu was shocked and angry. "How dare you?" As she spoke, she slapped the young man. Li Daocheng asked her to take care of Xiaoling River. If she was hit for no reason, she wouldn't be able to explain herself. When the cultivators sitting nearby saw the conflict, no one came out to stop it. They all looked like they were watching a show. The young man wanted to slap Xiaoling River, but when he sensed the wind coming from the palm, he immediately moved his hand and hit Xiaoling River's palm. The young man had already detected Lin Nuanyu's cultivation level. She was only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. The young man was the bodyguard and fighter of the Xiang family's young master, Xiang Yichun. His name was Song Yuan, and he was a cultivator at the peak of foundation establishment. He was only 1 step away from Jindan. He was also a cultivator who was extremely powerful. He didn't take Lin Nuanyu seriously at all. Xiang Yichun arrived a little late this time, so all the good seats were taken. After looking around, only Lin Nuanyu, who had a little girl with her, was the easiest to bully. Lin Nuanyu was a familiar face on Miscellaneous Treasure Street. Everyone who frequented Miscellaneous Treasure Street knew what she was capable of. Song Yuan knew Lin Nuanyu's background. As Xiang Yichun's fighter, he naturally had to solve his master's problems. It didn't matter if there weren't good seats, he could just take one by force. Seeing that Lin Nuanyu was easy to bully, he came up with a reason to chase the two of them away. There was a loud bang. Song Yuan's palm and Lin Nuanyu's delicate hand hit each other. The moment their palms met, a mocking smile appeared on Song Yuan's face. He didn't take Lin Nuanyu seriously. This woman would have to go back home for at least a month, and might even have some hidden injuries. Many female cultivators around them were worried. Were worried for Lin Nuanyu. They couldn't bear to continue watched. 2 weak girls, one big and one small, were being bullied by a big man. It wasn't that no cultivator could stand it, and some people wanted to help. But when they saw the 3 people standing behind Song Yuan, these cultivators who wanted to fight for justice chose to remain silent. Xiang Yichun was standing behind Song Yuan. The other 2 were Xiang Yichun's good brother, Chen Xiaoyan, and Chu Yanran, the eldest daughter of the Chu family, whom these 2 young masters were chasing. The Xiang and Chun families were famous on planet Beichin. They were considered big families, but compared to the Chu family, they paled in comparison to the Grand Wizard. The Chu family was one of the top families in the entire Federation. In fact, Chu Yanran wasn't the most important person in the Chu family, but she was Chu Jialuo's sister. That status made her a big deal. Chu Jialuo was the pride of this auction. At 28, he was already Yuan Ying's prodigy. Chu Yanran was the type of person who rose to the top. After her brother's rise in the Chu family, her status naturally rose as well. Over the years, more and more young men pursued Chu Yanran, and each one came from a more powerful background than the last. Chu Yanran's beauty was above average. With her status, it was inevitable that she would become a hot commodity. Xiang Yichun and Chen Xiaoyan were two of the better ones among Chu Yanran's many suitors. Although Chu Yanran was Chu Jialuo's sister, she wasn't invited. She had connections, but she wasn't strong enough to be invited. Before coming to the auction, she'd had some fun with the two young masters. She hadn't expected to find no seats. She hadn't even seen her brother. Chu Yanran wanted to contact Chu Jialuo, but she couldn't. Her brother's transmission channel had been turned off. Chu Yanran knew that Chu Jialuo valued this auction. Because there was something he urgently needed, he didn't want to be disturbed. Chu Yanran knew Chu Jialuo's personality all too well. Aside from Wei Xing, everyone else was superfluous. Even his sister was the same. If she annoyed him, he'd scold her. Chu Yanran couldn't reach Chu Jialuo, so she had to give up. Coming to the auction, a young lady of her status actually didn't have a place to sit. She felt very embarrassed. Chu Yanran was unhappy, so she vented her anger on Xiang Yichun and Chen Xiaoyan, the two young masters. She scolded the two of them, and her displeasure was obvious. She wanted to cut ties with Xiang Yichun and Chen Xiaoyan. Both the Xiangs and the Chens wanted to climb up the Chu's big tree. It was said that under a big tree, one could enjoy the shade. If they married Chu Yanran, the benefits to their family's company would be self-evident. Chu Yanran was unhappy, so the two young masters didn't dare to neglect her. Xiang Yichun immediately told Song Yuan to find a seat by any means. Song Yuan was eager to prove himself, so he didn't care about the countless gazes that were directed at him. He acted as if he was going to bully Lin Nuanyu and Xiao Lingxi because they were weak and had no one to back them up. He chased them away and snatched their seats. Song Yuan used 70% of his strength, which was more than enough to deal with Lin Nuanyu. But the moment their palms met, the sneer on Song Yuan's face froze. He felt a strong force. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Crack! Then there were two sounds of bones breaking. Song Yuan flew backward and landed on the aisle more than 10 meters away. Lin Nuanyu closed her eyes and struck out with her palm. She knew that she was no match for Song Yuan, and she also knew that she might be injured if she were to exchange blows with him. However, Li Daochong had saved his life and had entrusted him to take care of Xiao Lingxi for a while. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter, then he would be too useless. Lin Nuanyu knew she wasn't his match, but she still stood up for Xiaoling River. Closing her eyes was a reflex action. Even though Lin Nuanyu was mentally prepared, she was still afraid. But the pain she expected didn't appear. Lin Nuanyu opened her eyes in confusion. Song Yuan had already landed on the aisle more than 10 meters away. He clutched his chest in pain, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at Lin Nuanyu in disbelief. He didn't know what had happened. Xiang Yichun was surprised. She looked at Song Yuan and said coldly, "Useless thing." Lin Nuanyu felt a warm aura appear in her body. This aura was transmitted into her body by the big hand that suddenly appeared behind her waist. Lin Nuanyu turned around. "Mr. Li." Xiaoling River's face lit up at the same time. "Brother Daochong." Li Daochong had the murderous look in his eyes and nodded at the two girls. He withdrew his hand from Li Nuanyu's waist and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at Song Yuan indifferently. "You don't have to attend today's auction. You can get lost." Song Yuan stood up with difficulty, clutching his chest. He looked at Li Daochong, who suddenly appeared. He wanted to say something, but the blood in his body was boiling and he couldn't speak. Although Xiang Yichun was angry and embarrassed that Song Yuan lost to Lin Nuanyu, Song Yuan had done a lot for her all these years. He was a good dog. As the saying goes, you have to look at the owner before you hit the dog. The owner could hit, scold, or even kill the dog. But if an unrelated person appeared and scolded his dog and told his dog to get lost, that wasn't showing disrespect to the dog, but to the owner. Everyone in Miscellaneous Treasure Street knew that Song Yuan was Xiang Yichun's man. This guy who appeared out of nowhere completely ignored Xiang Yichun's existence in front of so many people. He told Song Yuan not to attend the auction and told him to get lost. This was clearly a public slap to Xiang Yichun's face. Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 533. Not only Xiang Yichun, but all the cultivators who heard Li Daocheng's words looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Song Yuan and the others aren't much, but who do you think you are, brat? None of the people present had ever seen Li Daocheng before. Dozens of telekinetic powers were projected onto Li Daocheng's body to probe him. After a few seconds, all the telekinetic powers were quickly withdrawn. The cultivators who used their telekinetic powers to probe him looked at Li Daocheng with even more contempt. Middle stage of Qi gathering? Not even a true cultivator. He actually dared to tell Xiang Yichun's bodyguard, Song Yuan, to get lost in front of him? The countless eyes that were looking at Li Daocheng seemed to be saying, "Are you trying to be funny?" Xiang Yichun looked at Li Daocheng and smiled. "Young man, it's always good to be low-key when you're outside. Didn't the elders at home teach you that there is always someone better than you? You don't look familiar. You must be a foreigner. Is this auction run by your family? Telling people to get lost at the drop of a hat. Do you really think you don't need to take responsibility for your nonsense?" Xiang Yichun always had a knife behind his smile and rarely flew into a rage. In the miscellaneous treasure street, he was known as the Smiling Tiger. The brighter Xiang Yichun smile, the more unlucky his enemies would be. 3 years ago, a very talented young man came to the miscellaneous treasure street. At the age of 25, he was already at the early Jindan realm. On the North Star planet, he was considered to have a high level of talent. For some unknown reason, he had a conflict with Xiang Yichun in the busiest street of the miscellaneous treasure street. During the whole process, the foreign cultivator was aggressive, while Xiang Yichun was smiling from beginning to end. He had a very good appearance and was not anxious at all. Not long after the incident, the foreign cultivator disappeared. A month later, the body of the foreign cultivator was found in a dry well at the end of the miscellaneous treasure street. The appearance was too horrible to look at. The Security Bureau immediately launched an investigation and eventually arrested an old Jindan cultivator. He claimed that he had poisoned the foreign cultivator to death, and that the reason for killing him was to steal the treasure. The old Jindan cultivator was nearing the end of his lifespan. How could he have the ability to kill a young Jindan cultivator? However, all the evidence pointed to this old Jindan cultivator. Furthermore, the old cultivator himself had admitted to killing the foreign cultivator. According to an insider, the old cultivator Jindan was just a scapegoat. The real culprit was Xiang Yichun. The Moonward clan was one of the most powerful clans on planet Polaris. They had connections with both the good and the bad, and they had deep connections with the underworld. Of course, it was a secret that the outside world didn't know about. Only the core members of the Xiang family knew about it. Xiang Yichun was one of them. The Xiang clan had risen to power 1,000 years ago in a chaotic world. They might not have a strong foundation, but they were definitely vicious and merciless. You can scram too. As soon as Xiang Yichun finished speaking, Li Daocheng's clear and indifferent voice sounded out unhurriedly. It was neither fast nor slow, but it could be heard clearly, and it entered the ears of every cultivator as if it was close at hand. Then a commotion broke out all around. "This brat is courting death." A cultivator shook his head and said, "Sigh, it's one thing for youngsters nowadays to be ignorant and incompetent, but each one is more arrogant and despotic than the last." Someone sighed. "His mouth is on his body. Why aren't you allowing him to speak?" Someone else wanted to see the world plunge into chaos. The hall on the first floor of the inspection hall was extremely large. It could accommodate 20 to 30,000 people without feeling crowded. However, there were only about 10,000 seats. Today, there were far more than 10,000 people. However, only 10,000 seats could fit. With such a large venue and so many people, it was naturally noisy at this moment. Not everyone paid attention to the conflict. In fact, After 2 to 3 hours of entering the venue, it was common for cultivators to clash with each other. Only the dozens of cultivators around Lin Nuanyu and Xiaoling River noticed this. The cultivators further away did not notice at all because the venue was too noisy. Xiang Yichun was stunned. He did not expect this brat who had appeared out of nowhere to be so arrogant. Not only did he hit the dog, he even dared to talk back to the owner. Chu Yanran stood at the side and watched. If Xiang Yichun did not react to being told to scram by an unknown brat, he could basically withdraw from Chu Yanran's suitors. Young man, you've gone too far. There are some people you can't afford to offend. Xiang Yichun stopped smiling and said in a low voice. As he spoke, Xiang Yichun raised his hand. Not far away, 2 cultivators appeared in a flash. 2 Jindan auras rushed towards them. The expressions of the weaker cultivators around the seats changed drastically. They felt the qi and blood in their bodies become unstable, and their hearts trembled slightly. Song Yuan was just Xiang Yichun's follower. These 2 were young Master Xiang's real bodyguards. These 2 people usually didn't follow Xiang Yichun around. They just hid in the dark and wouldn't appear unless it was necessary. As soon as they appeared, they immediately became the center of attention. The Xiang family's background is deeper than expected. Xiang Yichun has 2 Jindan cultivators as his bodyguards at all times. Not many young masters on planet Northstar enjoy such treatment. Someone sighed. Not many indeed. However, the Xiang family arranged for 2 Jindan cultivators to follow Xiang Yichun because they have connections with both the good and the bad. The underworld is not easy to walk, and the Xiang family has many enemies. A cultivator next to him said with a look of understanding. Chu Yanran was sizing up Li Daochong at this moment. She had never seen this young man before and was unfamiliar with him. There was nothing special about him, but if he dared to speak to a young master like Xiang Yichun, Chu Yanran would not believe him. Chu Yanran had grown up in the Federation's upper echelons. She had seen many plots of people pretending to be weak. In the Central Starfield, no matter how powerful one's background was, one had to keep a low profile. This was because a random passerby on the street could have an inexplicable connection with the Federation's core leadership. If one was not careful, they could crush you to dust in a matter of minutes. Although Chu Yanran had the typical temperament of a young lady, she was not stupid. The 2 Jindan cultivators stood in between Li Daochong and Xiang Yichun. The latter's gloomy expression disappeared, and a contemptuous smile appeared on his face. Kid, get out now, and I'll pretend you didn't say anything. I'll give you 3 seconds. Xiang Yichun's eyes flashed with cruelty. Pa! A crisp sound pierced their eardrums. The cultivators sitting around did not know what was going on. They only saw half of Xiang Yichun's face swelling up. The 2 Jindan cultivators protecting Xiang Yichun did not react at all. They did not see what had just happened. Xiang Yichun was stunned for a moment. Other than his face burning, he didn't know what was wrong either. Pa 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 pa. Then a crisp sound rang out at a high frequency. This time, everyone clearly saw Li Daochong take a step forward and raise his hand to slap Ikun. How dare you? Courting death. 2 of Xiang Yichun's Jindan shadow guards shouted at the same time, and the 2 of them attacked together. Pa 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 pa. However, before the 2 shadow guards could do anything, the 2 of them were slapped in the face as well. With one hand behind his back, Li Daochong stretched out his other hand and slapped Xiang Yichun and the 2 secret guards. It was like setting off firecrackers. The 2 dark guards had no chance to fight back at all. Hiss! Someone sucked in a breath of cold air. Xiang Yichun's 2 secret guards were both in the early stage of the Gold Core realm, but they were slapped at the same time without any room to fight back. That person's cultivation must be above the early stage of the Gold Core realm, at least the late stage of the Gold Core realm, or even the peak of the Gold Core realm. Moreover, the cultivation method he practiced was definitely a high-level cultivation method. His actual combat strength far exceeded that of an ordinary cultivator. After countless slaps, Li Daochong retracted his hand and looked at Xiang Yichun indifferently. He said calmly, "Are you going to scram or not?" Xiang Yichun's entire face was swollen like a pig's head. His eyes, which were not very big to begin with, were now so swollen that only a slit could be seen. Xiang Yichun was completely dumbfounded. He never thought that someone would really dare to slap him in public. He was the young master of the Xiang clan. On planet Northstar, everyone had to give his Xiang clan some face. Not to mention that there were many Yuanian cultivators connected to the Xiang clan. There are also Yuanian cultivators in the Xiang clan. Chu Yanran and Chen Xiaoyan were also stunned. How could they have imagined that Xiang Yichun would be beaten into a pig's head in public? In their world, this was unimaginable. The two Jindan Shadow Guards didn't even have a chance to fight back. Xiang Yichun, who had been beaten into a pig's head, didn't lose his mind. Instead, his mind gradually cleared up. No wonder this kid dared to shout at him. It turned out that he was strong. However, relying on one's own strength was far from enough. At least, it wasn't enough until one's strength reached a certain level. "You dare hit me?" Xiang Yichun cried out in disbelief. Bang! As soon as Xiang Yichun spoke, Li Daochong raised his foot and kicked him. Xiang Yichun's body flew back several meters, then fell to his knees with a thud. "Yes, I hit you." Li Daochong's tone was calm, but his words were more penetrating than if he'd shouted himself hoarse. "Unforgivable. Die. You must die. I'll kill you." Xiang Yichun knelt on the ground in pain. He clutched his abdomen and looked down at the ground with a ferocious expression. Xiang Yichun had never suffered such humiliation in his life. Fellow Taoists, don't go too far. Don't you think you've gone too far by attacking without any reason? Chu Yanran saw that Xiang Yichun had been beaten a little miserably. After all, they'd known each other for a while. If she didn't say anything, it wouldn't be right. Li Daochong glanced at Chu Yanran from the corner of his eyes and said, "Indiscriminate? You think he's allowed to bully a 9-year-old child and steal a child's seat? What kind of bullshit logic is that?" As the commotion grew louder, more and more cultivators began to pay attention to them. Chu Yanran's pretty face immediately turned red. When had the Chu family's eldest daughter ever been spoken to like this in public? "You." Chu Yanran was so angry that she couldn't speak. How could she swallow this insult? "You can scram too." Li Daochong's gaze turned cold. As he spoke, he lowered the hand behind his back. He looked like he was ready to slap Xiang Yichun again at any time. No matter how angry Chu Yanran was, she immediately cowered when she saw Li Daochong lower his hand. She wasn't Xiang Yichun. If she was really slapped in public, she wouldn't be able to face anyone anymore. Chu Yanran's pretty face turned cold. She subconsciously took a step back. "Do you know who I am? Just you wait. Let's see who scrammed today." With that, Chu Yanran turned and ran toward the VIP passage. Li Daochong completely ignored the departing Chu Yanran. He slowly walked in front of Xiang Yichun and looked down at young Master Xiang. "If you don't scram, it won't be as simple as a slap. I'll give you a memorable memory." Xiang Yichun endured the pain and stood up. Two hidden guards immediately stepped forward to support him. Xiang Yichun glared at Li Daochong. "You've got guts. Just wait and see. Let's go." After saying that, the two secret guards drove Xiang Yichun away. "Young man, impulsiveness is the devil. You've gotten yourself into big trouble because of a moment of pleasure." A kind-looking cultivator sitting next to him shook his head. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 534. Many cultivators looked at Li Daochong sympathetically. Although many people hated young masters like Xiang Yichun to the core, no one dared to stand up for him. Seeing someone stand up for Xiang Yichun, they were naturally satisfied. But after the fight, the cultivators looked at Li Daochong as if he was an idiot, thinking that he was dead meat. Li Daochong acted as if no one was around. He lowered his head and touched Xiaoling River's little head, a gentle smile on his face as if nothing had happened. "Lingxi, sit down." "Okay, Brother Daochong." Xiaoling River nodded vigorously and returned to her original seat. Lin Nuanya looked at Li Daochong in surprise, but in her heart, she wanted to leave. Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran wouldn't let it go so easily. Soon they would come back for revenge. It was not too late to leave now. Lin Nuanyu kept reminding herself. Young man, why are you still here? Hurry up and leave. Don't stay on planet Polaris anymore, an old man in the Foundation establishment stage advised. Yes, Mr. Lee. Why don't we leave first? Lin Nuanyu was no longer in the mood to participate in the auction. Her emotions were complicated, and she even began to regret coming to the auction with Li Daochong. If she had known this would happen, she would have come by herself. She would rather offend Jiang Ronghua than offend Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran. But it was too late to regret now. Aren't you going to sit? Li Daochong saw that Lin Nuanyu was standing still and asked. Lin Nuanyu hesitated. Even though she was timid and wanted to leave, in the end, she gritted her teeth and didn't leave. That auction item was too important to Lin Nuanyu. If she missed it, she would never be able to enter the Jin Dan stage in this lifetime. The Golden Origin Pill. This was the item that Lin Nuanyu was determined to get today. She had to get one even if she had to go bankrupt. Of course, besides the auction item, Lin Nuanyu wasn't a disloyal person. She was afraid, but she wouldn't run away at the last minute. Okay, have a seat, Lin Nuanyu replied, and sat down next to Xiaoling River. After the conflict just now, the two cultivators sitting next to each other quietly got up and walked away as if the matter had nothing to do with them. All of a sudden, there were a lot of empty seats. Li Daochong naturally didn't stand on ceremony and sat down against the Xiaoling River. The few cultivators who were trying to persuade Li Daochong to leave saw that not only did he not leave, he even sat down, seemingly waiting for the auction to begin. This brat really wants to save face. He actually sat down just like that. If he doesn't seek death, he won't die. Let him be. Anyway, we've already reminded him. If he doesn't want to leave, we can't do anything about it. Several kind-hearted cultivators began to chat with each other. Just a moment ago, they had a high opinion of Li Daochong, but at this moment, they had fallen back down. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. After beating up Xiang Yichun, there was nothing shameful about leaving now. Since he had taken advantage of her, he could just run. These cultivators' worries weren't without reason. Xiang Yichun had always been a vengeful person. Today, he had suffered such a big loss. If he didn't get back at her, he wouldn't be able to eat. Chu Yanran was the same. Who could stand being yelled at and told to get lost in public? Naturally, the two of them didn't just leave their harsh words for fun. Xiang Yichun was escorted by two secret guards to a private room on the third floor of the main hall to get help. Chu Yanran couldn't care less. She went to the VIP room to find her brother, Chu Jialuo. The private rooms on the third floor of the main hall were specially arranged for the local people of Planet North Star. The Xiang family was arranged here. If Xiang Yichun wasn't accompanying Chu Yanran, he would be bidding here. Bang bang. Two muffled sounds came from room 345 on the third floor. The two secret guards who were escorting Xiang Yichun flew backward and slammed into the wall of the private room behind them. A ripple of light appeared on the wall, then disappeared. The secret guards seemed to have hit an invisible barrier. Then they bounced back and hit the floor, creating a similar ripple of light. The two secret guards spat out a mouthful of blood. Ignoring the pain, they hurriedly got up and kneeled with cupped fists. Your humble servants are incompetent. Please punish us, master. The one who sent the two secret guards flying was none other than Xiang Yichun's father, Xiang Dingtian, a late-stage Jin Dan cultivator. Xiang Dingtian was happily discussing business with a few buyers from the Kuan Empire in the private room. If these buyers could purchase from the Xiang family, the three cultivation companies under the Xiang family would experience a qualitative leap in a short period of time. Xiang Dingtian was prepared to spend a lot of money today. He let the buyers choose what they liked at the auction. If they liked something, he would bid for it and give it to them. The whole negotiation process was very relaxed and pleasant. However, Xiang Dingtian didn't expect that when Xiang Yichun came in, his entire face was beaten up. Who dared to hit a member of the Xiang family? And it was the young master of the Xiang family. Did they eat a bear's heart or leopard's guts? No matter how well-mannered Xiang Dingtian was, seeing his son beaten up like this, he could no longer maintain his composure. His anger, with a whoosh, shot up violently. The first to blame were naturally the two secret guards. Xiang Dingtian spent a lot of money to hire them. They were called secret guards, but perhaps death servants was more appropriate. They needed to protect Xiang Yichun with their lives. However, they obviously failed to do so. How could Xiang Dingtian not be angry? Did you spend so much money to hire you just to watch your master get beaten up? Xiang Dingtian said as he stepped on one of the secret guards. Dad, don't blame them. They did their best. That kid is too cunning. I don't know how he did it, but he tricked them and made them unable to move. I was the same. I was tricked and slapped in the face in front of everyone. Dad, I can't take this lying down. Xiang Yichun covered his face and said angrily, I'm afraid you were the one who provoked him first. Xiang Dingtian snorted. Xiang Dingtian knew his son very well. Xiang Yichun's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to continue to act pitiful, but before he could say anything, Xiang Dingtian had already continued. Although I'm very unhappy that you use your family's name to stir up trouble, only I can teach you a lesson. If anyone else dares to touch you, they will be slapping the Xiang family's face. Where is he? Take me to him. Xiang Yichun's face lit up. On the other side, outside VIP 3, Chu Jialuo's eyes turned into heart shapes as he stared at Wei Xing in a daze. Xing, which auction item do you want today? I'll buy it for you. Chu Jialuo couldn't wait to dig out his heart and show it to Wei Xing. No need, Wei Xing replied impatiently. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked through the floor-to-ceiling window at the seats in the hall below. A familiar figure came into Wei Xing's sight. It was Li Daochong. Was he also here for the auction? The last time Wei Xing saw Li Daochong, she followed Wei Beitong to the Blue Bay Star. It had been a few months since then. Her grandfather regarded this kid as a treasure and wanted nothing more than to take him as his master. Although Wei Xing didn't understand, since her grandfather regarded Li Daochong so highly, he naturally had his reasons. Wei Xing grew up in a super rich family like the Wei family, so she naturally had her own unique way of dealing with people. There weren't many young people who could catch Wei Beitong's eye, and Li Daochong was the only one who had no background or history and was regarded highly only by his own strength. Wei Xing's impression of Li Daochong wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. She only felt that this guy was cold and arrogant, even a little condescending. Of course, he did have strength. Only Wei Xing knew the final ranking of the 100 schools joint examination. First place should be Li Daochong, not her. Since he was a talent that her grandfather wanted to rope in, she naturally had to put in more effort and establish a good relationship with him. The Shadow Serene Square didn't just belong to the Wei family. Although Wei Xing was still in school, she already knew that she needed to establish her own network. Wei Xing didn't listen to what Chu Jialuo said next. She couldn't be bothered to continue arguing with this young master of the Chu family, so she turned and entered the private room. As soon as she entered the private room, Wei Xing said to her Uncle Wang, Uncle Wang, I just saw a friend sitting downstairs. Please go down and invite him up. Tell him that I, Wei Xing, have something good for him and ask him if he wants it. Uncle Wang, who knew Wei Xing's personality well, rarely heard Miss Wei take the initiative to invite someone. Was the sun rising from the west? Yes, Mississippi. Who do you want to invite? Just point him out to me. Uncle Wang looked down through the floor-to-ceiling window of the VIP private room. That young man wearing a blue uniform sitting next to a little girl. His name is Li Daochong. Wei Xing immediately pointed at Li Daochong, who was sitting next to Xiaoling River. Got it, Mississippi. I'll send a set of data to master first. I'll go once I'm done. Uncle Wang's hand was busy working on his watch. No hurry. The auction won't start for a while. Wei Xing nodded and replied. At this moment, in the corridor outside the private room, Chu Jialuo saw that Wei Xing had returned to the private room. The heart shape in his eyes disappeared, and a trace of boredom appeared on his face. Chu Jialuo was about to turn around and return to the private room when he saw Chu Yanran running over. Chu Jialuo frowned slightly. His biological sister running over like this was definitely up to no good. She most likely had a conflict with someone and was asking her brother for help. This kind of plot had happened many times. Although Chu Jialua frowned, he sighed in his heart. He did not turn a blind eye to Chu Yinran. After all, he only had one biological sister. Moreover, they grew up together. How could he just stand by and watch her get bullied? Brother, someone told me to get lost. Boo-hoo. Chu Yinran ran over and hugged Chu Jialua. Her tears flowed down uncontrollably. Told you to get lost? Who's so bold? Chu Jialua was immediately furious. Usually, when Chu Yinran was bullied, it was just a small conflict with the young masters or young ladies of the aristocratic families. It was absolutely impossible for someone to tell her to get lost. In the hall downstairs, look, it's that guy. Chu Yinran saw that Chu Jialua was burning with anger and was secretly delighted. She immediately pointed downstairs through the floor-to-ceiling window. Chu Jialua's eyes were cold as he looked down. He followed Chu Yinran's finger and saw a young man in green sitting there leisurely. Let's go and have a look. I want to see what kind of person dares to tell my sister to get lost. Chu Jialua's face was cold as he walked downstairs. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 535. Huang Jiran reluctantly followed her father to the private room that Jiang Tai and had prepared for her. Jiang Ronghua's soul power had almost been completely absorbed by Li Daochong, and he only had a bit of spirit qi left to use. He could barely be considered a foundation establishment cultivator. Originally, Jiang Ronghua had no interest in Huang Jiran, but he saw that she had an unusual relationship with Li Daochong. Li Daochong had already destroyed Jiang Ronghua, and the latter knew that he couldn't win against Li Daochong. If he wanted revenge, the only way was to do something behind the scenes. Jiang Ronghua was a powerful being in the underworld, but after the incident, he had lost more than half of his memories, leaving him with less than 1%. Even so, this 1% of his original consciousness was much stronger than an ordinary person's. Jiang Ronghua naturally knew that after Li Daochong found out what he was, it was impossible for him to let him go. Li Daochong wanted him to hand over 30 million elementary spirit stones tomorrow, and he would let him go. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to return tomorrow. If he wanted to live, he had to find that kid's weakness. Huang Jiran might be the best life-saving card right now. After Jiang Ronghua left private room 222, he kept asking about Huang Jiran's well-being. His words were pleasant and warm. Huang Yuelong and Jiang Tian saw it, and the two elders were even more certain that they wanted to matchmake the two of them. After sitting down in the private room and chatting for a while, Jiang Tian went straight to the point. Director Huang, your second uncle, Huang Tianming, and I have been old friend for decades. Brother Tianming has already told me about your other purpose of coming here. Let's not delay any further. I like Jiran very much. She's more than enough to be a good match for my disappointing grandson. Why don't we take advantage of this grand auction to settle their marriage? What do you think? Huang Yuelong couldn't ask for more. He had been thinking about how to bring it up, and now that Jiangtan said this, he naturally went with the flow. I have the same idea. It's my daughter's fortune to be chosen by Director Jiang. She's not young anymore, and it's time for her to find a husband. Jiang Tai nodded and narrowed his eyes. He glanced at Huang Jiran, who was standing absent-mindedly by the window. Huang Jiran did not hear the conversation between Jiang Tai and Huang Yuelong. There's no time like the present. Why don't we take advantage of this auction and let this old man announce their marriage? They'll be engaged today. Jiang Tian was determined to succeed in the four-ring starfield, so he wasn't in such a hurry. However, after seeing Huang Jiran and that young man, he seemed to have lost his soul. How could Jiang Tian, who had lived for so long, not see the deeper meaning behind this? The young girl's heart had probably been hooked by that brat. In order to avoid any undue delay, Jiang Tai directly set the date for today. Huang Yuelong was stunned. He didn't expect Jiang Tai to be so hasty. He subconsciously resisted, but when he thought of his future path of promotion, his resistance quickly disappeared. However, he didn't immediately agree. Instead, he looked at Jiang Tian. His gaze seemed to be saying, I raised my daughter painstakingly. Do you think it's enough for the Jiang family to propose marriage just by moving your lips? Is my Huang Yuelong's daughter that cheap? After being in the government for so many years, Huang Yuelong was calm and steady. He wasn't easily fooled. Of course, Jiang Tian understood Huang Yuelong's intention. He smiled slightly and said, Director Huang, take out the contracts you brought. I'll sign them for you now. Shining Market will send someone to Planet Chiang tomorrow to choose the location of the market. When Huang Yuelong heard this, a smile appeared on his expressionless face. He stretched out his hand, and more than 10 contracts appeared. He immediately placed them on the table. Jiang Tian didn't hesitate. He immediately stamped Shining Market's exclusive spiritual seal on the contracts. When Huang Yuelong saw the seal on the contracts, he couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. This time, Shining Market's presence on Planet Chiang was enough for him to be promoted by 3 levels. Director Jiang, I'll entrust Jiaran to your Jiang family. She'll be engaged today. She'll be the future daughter-in-law of the Jiang family. Huang Yuelong said happily. Jiang Tian nodded and laughed. Director Huang, you can rest assured that your daughter will marry into the Jiang family. I, Jiang Tian, will guarantee that she'll be the future housekeeper of the Jiang family. Ha ha ha. When Huang Yuelong heard this, the smile on his face widened. He felt excited just thinking about it. When Jiang Ronghua took over the Jiang family in the future, his daughter would become the matriarch of the Jiang family. When that happened, he could directly enter the Federation government through his daughter's connections. Dad, what are you talking about with Grandpa Jiang? You're chatting so happily. Huang Jiaran was pulled back to reality by Jiang Tian's laughter. Although her heart was still thinking about Li Daochong, she knew that she couldn't leave the box now. She had no choice but to shift her gaze back to the box. Jiaran, Father and Grandpa Jiang are discussing your marriage. Today is the day of your engagement. In a moment, Grandpa Jiang will announce it in front of all the cultivators who came to participate in the auction. Huang Yuelong announced to Huang Jiaran with a smile. As for what Huang Jiaran thought, was she willing or not, Huang Yuelong didn't care at all. Instead, he spoke with a commanding tone. What? Engagement? Dad, what engagement? Huang Jiaran's eyes widened. She looked at Huang Yuelong incredulously. It was true that her father was obsessed with politics, but Huang Jiaran never imagined that he would one day use her as a bargaining chip in a deal. Huang Jiaran's mother's behavior had been very strange. She had been holding Huang Jiaran's hand the entire time they were on their way to Planet Polaris. She had been telling her all sorts of things, and there were tears in her eyes. At the time, Huang Jiaran didn't think much of it. She thought her mother didn't want her to go away. Now that she thought about it, she realized that her mother had known the purpose of her trip all along. I've discussed it with Grandpa Jiang. We think you and Ronghua are very suitable for each other. We decided to let you two get married. Let's set the date for today. We'll discuss it again on the day of the wedding. Huang Yuelong's tone was solemn. Jiang Ronghua looked at Huang Jiaran with a smile. Huang Jiaran's hair stood on end. No, I don't agree. Huang Jiaran lost control of her emotions. Jiang Tian's old face sank. Huang Yuelong's face was ashen. He never expected his daughter to refuse him in public. Jiaran, I'm doing this for your own good. You can't stay in a small place like Red Sun for the rest of your life. Even the 4 most powerful families on Red Sun can't compare to the Jiang family. Don't be stubborn. Huang Yuelong tried to control his emotions. Dad, how can you use me as a bargaining chip on your path to becoming an official? I don't know this man at all. We've only known each other for a few days, and now you want me to marry him? Have you thought about my feelings? Your daughter can promise you anything, except for this. No matter what you say, I will not agree. Huang Jiaran pointed at Jiang Ronghua and said sternly. Jiang Ronghua's eyes flashed with a cold light. A black thread emerged from beneath his feet and drilled into Huang Jiaran's body. This was his last strand of soul power. Huang Jiaran was his last hope. He couldn't let her go. Downstairs in the hall, tens of thousands of cultivators had gathered. It was quite noisy. Li Daochong sat quietly in his seat, waiting for the auction to begin. However, he had just sat down for a while when there was a commotion behind him. Li Daochong activated his telekinesis and sensed that Xiang Yichun had returned. His face turned cold. Led by Xiang Dingtian, 7 or 8 members of the Xiang family walked aggressively to Li Daochong's seat. Xiang Dingtian looked down at Li Daochong, who was sitting in his seat. "Did you hit Yichun just now?" Li Daochong didn't even look at Xiang Dingtian. Instead, he looked at Xiang Yichun, who had returned. He said coldly, "I asked you to get lost. Why did you come back? I'll give you 3 seconds to disappear. Otherwise, I'll break your mouth." Hiss! The surrounding cultivators gasped and made way for them. They didn't want to be involved. All the cultivators looked at Li Daochong as if he was an idiot. This guy was really brainless. Xiang Dingtian's eyes were cold. He didn't expect that there would be a fool who didn't even know about the Xiang family. Xiang Yichun subconsciously covered his face. However, he was not afraid of this guy. "Brat, you're still acting tough when you're about to die." Smack! There was a crisp sound. Li Daochong raised his hand and slapped Xiang Yichun's face. The area fell into a dead silence. Many cultivators who were watching the show looked at Li Daochong in disbelief with their mouths wide open. This guy was really tired of living. He dared to slap Xiang Yichun in front of Xiang Dingtian. Xiang Dingtian's heart skipped a beat. He didn't even see how this young man hit Xiang Yichun. He activated his spiritual force and probed Li Daochong. However, he didn't detect anything. The aura of this young man was still at the Qi gathering realm. Xiang Dingtian had seen a lot and calmed down. If he couldn't even see clearly when he hit Xiang Yichun, it was impossible that he was only at the Qi gathering realm. Something was wrong. The members of the Xiang family who were standing behind Xiang Dingtian were angry. A Jin Dan cultivator rushed forward and was about to hit Xiang Yichun, but he was stopped by Xiang Dingtian. Xiang Yichun saw that his father not only didn't stand up for him, but also stopped his family members. What was the meaning of this? "May I know where you are from?" Xiang Dingtian asked tentatively. "Why are you still here?" Li Daochong stared at Xiang Yichun and asked calmly. "Brother, he's the one who asked me to leave." At this time, Chu Yanran's voice came from behind. Xiang Dingtian turned around and saw Chu Jialuo walking horizontally. He didn't take big steps, but after a few steps, he appeared in front of them. Although Chu Jialuo was only a descendant of the Chu family, he was already a Yuanian cultivator at a young age and was the first successor of the Chu family. His status was only higher than Xiang Dingtian's. Li Daochong dared to slap Xiang Yichun in front of Xiang Dingtian. The latter was afraid that this young man had a powerful background. But when he saw Chu Jialuo, Xiang Dingtian's fear disappeared immediately. No matter how powerful this young man's background was, he couldn't be more powerful than Chu Jialuo. The Chu family was one of the super families in the Shanghua Federation. Chu Jialuo looked at Li Daochong up and down and asked with a faint smile, "You asked my sister to leave? Another one? Do you think I'm joking?" Li Daochong ignored Chu Jialuo's words and looked at Chu Yanran behind him. His voice was as cold as frost. "Huh?" Chu Jialuo was confused. This young man was really brave. He dared to talk to him like this in front of him. The smile on Chu Jialuo's face suddenly disappeared. It was not so fun to meet a hothead. There was no way to reason with this kind of person. The fist was the truth. Chu Jialuo's eyes flashed, and he raised his hand to slap Li Daochong's shoulder. Chu Jialuo was at the early stage of Yuanying. Even if it was just a light slap, the power of his slap was enough to shatter bones and organs. Li Daochong raised his hand. Bang! With a muffled sound, Chu Jialuo took a small step back. Li Daochong did not move at all. What? Xiang Dingtian's eyes twitched violently. This young man could take Chu Jialuo's slap? How was it possible? Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran were dumbfounded. What was going on? Chu Jialuo was even more confused. He had used 30% of his strength in his seemingly casual slap. Even a cultivator at the peak of Jin Dan couldn't take it. This young man blocked his slap so easily. Chu Jialuo's eyes flashed with confusion. What are you doing? What are you doing? Where did this wild cultivator come from? How dare you attack young Master Chu? Hurry up and leave the auction house. You're not welcome here." A middle-aged man in uniform suddenly ran over and shouted at Li Daochong. This middle-aged man was the on-site manager of the auction house. He had already noticed this, but he chose to turn a blind eye because he didn't know the details of the two parties. The middle-aged manager had just received a message from Jiang Ronghua, asking him to drive Li Daochong away. The middle-aged manager naturally recognized Chu Jialuo and Xiang Dingtian. Their background was not comparable to that of ordinary cultivators. Someone offended both of them at the same time. Wasn't he digging his own grave? As soon as the middle-aged manager finished speaking, several staff members came up together, looking determined to drive Li Daochong away. "Didn't you hear what I said? You are not welcome here. You can leave. Why are you still standing here? Do you want us to drag you out?" The middle-aged manager looked down on Chu Jialuo, with young Master Jiang behind him and helping Chu Jialuo and Xiang Dingtian. He could do whatever he wanted. It was this young man's fault for offending someone he shouldn't have. Li Daochong frowned and said, "You didn't say anything when a few adults were bullying a child. Now you're here." The middle-aged manager snorted and took out a sign with his position on it. He then said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Leave now. I'm the person in charge of this auction. According to my observation, you have a serious tendency to violence. You are not welcome here. If you don't leave now, I'll call the security bureau to take you away." Xiang Dingtian, Xiang Yichun, and Chu Yanran looked at Li Daochong with sneers. Xiaoling River and Lin Nuanyu were dumbfounded. The staff came out to drive them away. They couldn't stay in the auction house any longer. Hearing the words security bureau, the two girls couldn't help but tremble. "You guys are really evil." The corner of Li Daochong's lips curled up. The qi in his body began to stir, and he was about to release the suppression of the nascent soul stage. A deep voice rang out. "Manager Liu, what's going on?" Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Wang Heipo had appeared behind the middle-aged manager. Wang Heipo was the butler of the Wei family and the favorite of Wei Beitong. He used to be the leader of the Dragon Teeth Regiment of the Federation's Divine Generals. After retiring from the army, he went to the Wei family. Wang Heipo's reputation spread far and wide. Who didn't know of him? Seeing that it was Wang Heipo, the middle-aged manager immediately bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Mr. Wang. This kid hit someone for no reason. On behalf of the organizer of this auction, I ask him to leave. If he has disturbed you, please forgive him." "Ask him to leave? My miss invited him to the VIP room. Do you mean that if my miss wants to see him, she has to leave?" Wang Heipo asked calmly. Hiss. Manager Liu sucked in a cold breath. Xiang Dingtian, Chu Jialuo, and the others were surprised. They wondered if they had heard wrong. After Wang Heipo finished speaking, he bowed slightly to Li Daochong and said, "Mr. Li, my miss invites you upstairs. She said she has something good for you." Li Daochong was also a bit confused. He didn't know the middle-aged man in front of him. "Who is your miss?" "Wei Xin." Chapter 536. Li Daochong's expression changed slightly when he heard Wei Ziying's name, and he immediately withdrew the spirit energy in his body. There was no need to make a big fuss on such an occasion, and Li Daochong was too lazy to argue with these guys. They were just looking down on others. This kind of person was everywhere. They sucked up to those in power and bullied the weak. If you were strong, they would treat you like a grandson. If you were weak, they would step on you without hesitation. In Li Daochong's eyes, these people were very pitiful, especially people like Xiang Yichun, who actually snatched a seed from a child just to please a female cultivator. Li Daochong didn't even want to look at him. However, Li Daochong was a person who would finish what he started. Since he told you to get lost, you had to get lost. Li Daochong hated the kind of people who bullied children the most. Only Li Daochong didn't know that Wang Heipo was the Wei clan's chief steward. When the others saw Wang Heipo, their expressions changed. This chief steward, Wang, was not easily seen. He was the only core member of the Wei clan with a different surname. Wei Beitong trusted him even more than his own son. It was said that Wang Heipo saved Wei Beitong's life. When they heard Wang Heipo say that Wei Xing had invited this strange young man into the private room for a chat, everyone's expression was very interesting. The onlookers felt like they were watching a blockbuster drama. A few minutes ago, everyone looked at Li Daochong as if he was an idiot, thinking that this guy was dead for sure. Now, everyone's expression changed drastically. Li Daochong suddenly became mysterious in their eyes. They recalled this young man's previous actions, and then Wang Heipo, the chief steward of the Wei clan, personally coming to invite him. It turned out that he had a big backer. In this way, this young man's previous actions were not stupid. He didn't take the Xiang clan and the Chu clan seriously at all. However, was it enough to just know the Wei clan? If your surname was Wei, it would be different. The Wei clan was more powerful than the Chu clan. If your surname was Wei, the Xiang clan and the Chu clan could only swallow their anger and filter this matter out. However, if his surname wasn't Wei, this matter wouldn't be settled so easily. Xiang Dingtian narrowed his eyes and sized up Li Daochong. He didn't expect him to know Wei Xiying. Was he a student of St. Hua University? Wei Xiying had just entered Tsinghua University this year. Chu Jialuo's heart was filled with jealousy. Where did this brat come from? Why would Wei Xiying invite him? Manager Lu's body was soaked in sweat in an instant. His whole body was trembling, his legs were weak, and he couldn't stand steadily. His mind was blank. Originally, he thought that he could just casually deal with this wild brat and curry favor with Xiang Dingtian and Chu Jialuo without any losses. Who would have thought that this shabbily dressed fellow with low cultivation actually knew the eldest daughter of the Wei clan, Wei Xing? Didn't he just poke a huge hole in the ground? The manager surnamed Lu felt his vision blur. He saw a blur in his vision and was in a dizzy state. After Wang Heipo sent out the invitation, everyone's mental activity became active. Mr. Li, please, Wang Heipo continued. Li Daochong raised his hand and motioned for him to wait. He turned to look at Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran and said lightly, "Why don't you get lost?" Xiang Dingtian and Chu Jialuo were a little confused. They thought that this matter had temporarily come to an end after Wang Heipo sent out the invitation. They didn't expect this brat to be so persistent. Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran were also confused. Wang Heipo was present, and the others were at a loss. They all looked at Li Daochong. Mr. Li asked you to get lost. Why did you get lost? Wang Heipo followed. What? Wang Heipo actually took the brat's side without thinking. Xiang Dingtian and Chu Jialuo were even more confused. What was the relationship between this brat and Wei Xing? This guy has a special relationship with the Wei clan. No wonder he dared to slap Xiang Yichun in public. Yeah, the Xiang clan is in trouble this time. Wang Heipo can directly represent the Wei clan's attitude. He took the young man's side, which shows that this young man has a very deep relationship with the Wei clan. Some people whispered nearby. After a few seconds of silence, Xiang Dingtian's face twitched slightly. Xiang Yichun didn't know whether to stay or leave. She looked at her father for help and shouted, "Dad, get lost." Xiang Dingtian had nowhere to vent his anger and shouted angrily. Xiang Yichun was dumbfounded. She was used to acting like a tyrant. She didn't expect to fall so miserably today. After Xiang Dingtian finished speaking, he winked at the Xiang clan next to him and asked them to take Xiang Yichun away. Chu Yanran bit down hard on her lower lip. She still wanted to go against Li Daochong. She was still thinking, I won't leave. You can't hit me in front of so many people, can you? While Chu Yanran was thinking, Chu Jialuo's servant came out and pulled her upstairs. Seeing the two descendants of the big clans being humiliated, many cultivators who had been bullied by Xiang Yichun felt very satisfied. They finally got their revenge. Just when everyone thought the matter was over, Li Daochong's voice sounded again. I asked you to get out of the auction, not upstairs. As soon as he said that, everyone fell silent. You should be lenient whenever possible. The Xiang clan and the Chu clan have already given in. It's not good for you to keep on attacking. After all, the Xiang clan and the Chu clan were not to be trifled with. They had only given in for the sake of the Wei clan. You're going too far, kid. Everyone thought so. They felt that the kid in front of them, who had a special relationship with the Wei clan, was a bit too arrogant. Even Wang Heipo's expression changed slightly. When he came down, Wei Xing had instructed him not to slight this Mr. Li under any circumstances. Wang Heipo naturally understood that Miss Wei had said that. So when Li Daochong asked Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran to get out, he spoke up for them. However, Wang Heipo thought it would be fine as long as the other party gave in. He didn't expect Mr. Li to be so stubborn. Kid, don't think that you can ignore everything just because you know the Wei clan. The most important thing in life is to know when to advance and when to retreat. Xiang Dingtian looked at Li Daochong with a gloomy face and said meaningfully, "You're right. The most important thing is to know when to advance and when to retreat. Mr. Li has given you a way out twice. If you still don't know when to retreat, don't blame Mr. Li for being ruthless. Go back and teach your son what it means to respect the old and love the young. Also, don't mess with people you shouldn't mess with. Get out." Li Daochong's eyes were piercingly cold. His patience had run out. Arrogant, too arrogant. The surrounding cultivators stared at Li Daochong in a daze. Xiang Dingtian was so angry that he couldn't speak. He glanced at Wang Heipo and said, "Mr. Wang, I'll give you face. Your Miss Wei wants to see him. I'll let her see him for the time being. Later, I hope the Wei clan won't interfere in the grudge between the Xiang clan and this person." Wang Heipo frowned slightly, and his impression of Li Daochong had already been reduced. "Kid, it's enough that you're like a fox assuming the might of a tiger. Could it be that you want to provoke a battle between the Wei clan and the two great clans?" "The Wei clan has always been clear about public and private matters," Wang Heipo replied ambiguously. The meaning of this was clear. In fact, the code meant that the Wei clan wouldn't interfere in things that they shouldn't. Xiang Dingtian snorted and turned to leave. Li Daochong suddenly stretched out his hand, and an invisible force picked up Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran, who were not far away, at the same time. With a whoosh, the two were thrown out of the hall. After doing all this, Li Daochong acted as if nothing had happened. Holding Xiaoling River's arm, he glanced at the stunned Lin Nuanyu and then said to Wang Heipo, "Let's go." Under the gaze of the crowd, Li Daochong held Xiaoling River's arm and followed Wang Heipo to the VIP passage. Soon, they disappeared in the hall, leaving the Xiang clan and Chu Jialua behind. Haha, this auction is going to be interesting. Yes, such a fierce conflict has occurred before the auction started. Later, when the auction items that both sides are interested in appear, won't they fight for it? Many cultivators were talking about it, as if they wanted to see the world in chaos. Xiang Dingtian couldn't stand it, and Chu Jialua couldn't stand it either. But he couldn't stand it, not because his sister was thrown out in public, but because why did Wei Xing invite this guy to a private room to be alone? In Chu Jialua's heart, Wei Xing would definitely be his dual-day partner in the future. He had already obtained the qualification to enter the Dragon Teeth of the Divine General Reserve Team and would report there soon. Chu Jialua was confident that he could cultivate to the peak of yuanying in the Dragon Teeth and enter the Divine General Group within 10 years. As long as he became a Divine General, no matter how arrogant Wei Xing was, she wouldn't be able to ignore him. When he proposed marriage to the Wei clan would definitely agree. Everyone looked at Chu Jialua strangely. It was understandable that Xiang Dingtian didn't dare to make a move. After all, the Xiang clan only had one patriarch yuanying, but the Chu clan had more than 10 yuanying cultivators, and Chu Jialua himself was an early-stage yuanying cultivator. How could a yuanying cultivator not react at all when his sister was thrown out? "Young Master Chu, how can you stand it?" Some cultivators were puzzled. "I think it's mostly because of Wei Xing. Chu Jialua is the craziest one among all of Wei Xing's suitors. That guy named Li was invited by Wei Xing. No matter how angry Chu Jialua is, he wouldn't want to cripple the person his goddess invited. You're right. Even heroes have a weakness for beauties. But it's a pity that he's too obsessed with beauties. It's not good for his cultivation in the future." "That's not necessarily true. I think Chu Jialua has a strong heart to be able to bear it. A little impatience will spoil great plans." Young Master Chu's target is Wei Xing, so he naturally has to be patient before reaching his goal. The Xiang clan left the hall with a grim face, and Chu Jialua disappeared in a flash. As for Xiang Yichun and Chu Yanran, who were thrown out of the hall, they were forgotten. After the Xiang clan confirmed that Xiang Yichun was only thrown out and was not a hindrance, no one went out to pull Xiang Yichun back under Xiang Dingtian's order. In the VIP box, Wei Xing sat on the sofa in a blue dress, holding a cup of spirit tea in her hand and taking a sip. Li Daochong looked at Wei Xing with interest, waiting for her to speak first. Xiaoling River and Lin Nuanyu looked around. The standard of this VIP box was much higher than that of the outside. It could be described as magnificent. It was impossible to tell from the outside that it was so big inside. It was more than 100 square meters, and it seemed to have used Neiyu space technology. The various advanced magic treasures for civilian use were an eye-opener for the two girls. Wei Xing took a sip of tea and let go of her hand. The cup containing the spirit tea automatically flew to the coffee table, and with a flash, it automatically kept warm. Wei Xing moved her hand, and the teapot on the coffee table automatically flew up, and 3 teacups flew out of the cabinet and landed on the coffee table. Wei Xing poured 3 full cups, and with a gentle wave of her hand, the 3 teacups flew to Li Daochong, Lin Nuanyu, and Xiaoling River. Mr. Li, this is my grandfather's treasured Long Yuan Jian. Cultivators drink a cup every day, and it can stabilize their cultivation and strengthen their spirit bodies. If ordinary people drink it, it can prolong their lifespan, strengthen their physique, and maintain their youth, Wei Xing introduced. After hearing this, Lin Nuanyu and Xiaoling River both looked at the spirit tea in their hands in awe, and they immediately raised their cups and took a sip. Instantly, a warm sensation flowed down their throats, and there was a cooling sensation, but it was not as stimulating as peppermint. It was very gentle, and when it entered their abdomen, they immediately felt an indescribable sense of comfort. Li Daochong glanced at the tea, but didn't drink it. These things were useless to him. I wonder what Miss Wei has to show me. Wei Xing smiled lightly, and there was a hint of leisure on her beautiful face. Mr. Li sure is anxious. Oh, right, should I call you Mr. Li? Or classmate Li? Li Daochong shrugged. Up to you, it's just a name. Wei Xing nodded and said, I'll call you Mr. Li. Grandpa calls you Mr. Li, so it feels a little inappropriate for me to call you classmate. Mr. Li, you should still remember the last time you asked Grandpa to bring you something. Although you took it once, there were still some things you didn't prepare. Grandpa has been thinking about it, and he has been spending a lot of time looking for it. A few days ago, he happened to buy something, and it happened to be with me. Since I met you here, I'll give it to you. As she spoke, Wei Xing's mind moved, and a red and yellow 9-petaled flower appeared in her palm. There seemed to be a Buddha sitting in the center of the flower. Li Daochong's eyes lit up. Sepulchre flower. Chapter 537. A few months ago, on the Blue Bay Star, Wei Beitong promised that he could provide Li Daochong with all the materials he needed to make high-level talismans. But when Li Daochong really said the names of the materials, Wei Beitong was extremely embarrassed. He really couldn't take out more than 10 materials. But then, Wei Beitong kept this in mind. After a period of collection, he had collected more than half of the materials Li Daochong mentioned, leaving only the Earth Treasury flower. When Li Daochong said these materials, he didn't expect Wei Beitong to provide all of them. It was already good enough that he could provide half. Wei Beitong's ability was truly impressive. He had collected almost all of the items except for the sepulchre flower. After Li Daochong took the other materials, he had forgotten about it. He didn't expect the Wei family to still remember. Looking at the Earth Treasury flower in Wei Xing's hand, Li Daochong's eyes, which were usually as calm as water, flashed. With the Earth Treasury flower, he could make level 15 or even level 16 talismans. The power of talismans above level 15 was comparable to a meteor shower. Of course, the difficulty of making them would increase exponentially. Even the currently Daochong would not be able to complete one without a month or two. But it was worth the effort to make such a talisman. Once it was made, it would be enough to kill all the Yuanian cultivators and pose a fatal threat to soul formation cultivators. With such a talisman on him, his safety would be greatly improved. To deal with dark ghosts, level 16 talismans were enough to threaten dark ghosts like the cherry blossom gauze and Xingpa Yuo. Demons of the Hades would also retreat and not dare to meet them. It was almost equivalent to a small nuclear warhead. Therefore, the value of this earth treasury flower to Li Daochong was self-evident. This thing was prohibited in the Federation. It was not allowed to be traded at all, although most people had no use for it. It was like uranium was used to make nuclear warheads. Was it useful for you to take it? Obviously, it was useless and would cause harm to the body. However, there were many capable people in the world, and it was hard to guarantee that someone would make use of them. The Earth Treasury Flower was a strange spirit herb that was similar to uranium. This kind of spirit herb grew in the core of a cultivation planet, just like a flower that grew in the abyss of hell. That was how it got its name. This flower could automatically release an extremely tyrannical, raging flame ray. Ordinary people who got close to it would be burned to ashes. Cultivators did not have Jindan cultivators, and they would be burned and crippled if they got close. The reason why Wei Xing could take out the Earth Treasury Flower without any hesitation was because it was wrapped in a layer of miniature spiritual array. The spirit array blocked the raging flame ray, preventing it from being released. "Mister, what are you waiting for? Take it." Wei Xing smiled as she saw the eagerness in Li Daochong's eyes. Li Daochong took the Earth Treasury Flower from Wei Xing's hand and put it away into his storage ring. "Mr. Li, Grandpa has been busy researching a new type of steel puppet recently. He is at a critical juncture, so he can't give it to you in person. He asked me to give it to Mr. Li." The Earth Treasury Flower was priceless, but Wei Xing didn't seem to care at all after giving it to Chun Fan. Wang Heipo was a bit confused. He didn't know about this at all. Wei Beitong had never mentioned it to him. Judging from Wei Xing's attitude towards Mr. Li, Wei Beitong didn't just look at this young man. There was probably a deeper reason. There were only a handful of people in the entire Federation who could make Wei Beitong give away such a precious item and treat this young man with such respect. As far as Wang Heipo knew, there wasn't a single person as young as Mr. Li. There was no such person on Wei Beitong's list of important people. Wang Heipo's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but be curious about Mr. Li's background. Wang Heipo knew the top few people in the Federation like the back of his hand. Whether it was their families, cultivation companies, or their descendants, he didn't have any impression of this young man in front of him. "Thank you for taking this matter to heart, Senior Wei. I apologize for not being able to make it in time. Miss Wei, please pass on message. I will definitely pay you a visit on the 3rd of next month." Li Daochong nodded slightly. Since Wei Beitong was so concerned about him, it wouldn't be right if he didn't give him something in return. Li Daochong didn't have the habit of taking things for free. "Okay, Grandpa will be very happy to know that Mr. Li is coming to visit." Wei Xing had been waiting for this sentence. Although she still couldn't understand why Grandpa was so respectful towards this young man, she was sure he had his reasons. Qi therapy was still a little too unfamiliar to Wei Xing. Even though Wei Beitong had already explained it clearly to her, she still couldn't fully understand what was so special about it. Li Daochong had no intention of staying after taking the sepulchre flower. Wei Xing's urge to stay was rejected. Li Daochong didn't plan to stay at the auction for too long. He would leave after buying the 9 transformation heavenly pill. He didn't have time to stay here and watch the show. As for the items that were praised to the sky, he wasn't interested in them at all. Useless things were useless no matter how good they were. It was the same as a glass of water being worth less than a diamond in the desert. With the sepulchre flower and the 9 transformation heavenly pill, there were a lot of things to do next. After leaving the box, Li Daochong helped Xiaoling River back to their original seats in the hall. It was as if this row of seats was possessed. No one dared to sit down. When the surrounding cultivators saw Li Daocheng return, a strange look appeared in their eyes. They didn't know what this unfamiliar young man had just gone to see Wei Xing and what the two had talked about. However, no one dared to provoke Li Daocheng anymore. This kid was extremely domineering. He didn't even care about the Xiang and Chu clans, let alone ordinary cultivators. The others were just curious. However, the manager, surnamed Liu, who was in charge of assigning tasks on the first floor, paled when he saw Li Daocheng return. He had been so scared that he pissed his pants and thought he was dead for sure. Unexpectedly, the young man who had been invited by Wei Xing seemed to have forgotten about him. After throwing Xiang Yichun and Chu Yin ran out of the hall, he didn't look for trouble with him. Guessing that the young man had forgotten about him, the manager, surnamed Liu, felt that he had escaped a disaster. Trembling, he continued to do his work. It wasn't easy for him to feel a little more at ease, but the young man had returned. The manager's legs trembled, and he almost knelt on the spot. Holding onto the wall, he left the front hall timidly and hid in the back hall. He entered a lounge in the back hall and collapsed on a chair, complaining that he was feeling unwell. The manager, surnamed Liu, was scared out of his wits. What he didn't know was that Li Daocheng didn't take him seriously at all. It wasn't that he had forgotten, but that he couldn't be bothered to deal with someone like him. In the huge hall on the first floor, tens of thousands of cultivators were either sitting or standing. The entire hall was crowded. Only the row where Li Daocheng and the other two were sitting was empty. There were more than 10 seats on the left and right, but only Li Daocheng, Shaoling River, and Lin Nuanyu were sitting. As time passed, the auction was about to officially begin. The front desk had already been set up. Zheng Jiao appeared on the stage in a black robe, holding a spirit wheat in her hand. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from all over the world, welcome everyone who has traveled thousands of miles to participate in the first supreme auction of Miscellaneous Treasure Street. I believe that the auction items this time will definitely not disappoint everyone. I am the auctioneer of this auction. Due to the large number of guests, I have delayed some time. I hereby apologize to everyone. Without further ado, the auction will now begin. Our staff, please bring up the first item, the Divine Wood Energy Recovery Pill. As soon as Zheng Jiao finished speaking, the hall was in an uproar. The first auction item is already of such high standards. The Divine Wood Cheer Restoring Pill is a super restorative spiritual medicine. When a nascent soul cultivator's spiritual aura is exhausted, one pill can restore half of his spiritual aura. Normally, you can't even see it, let alone buy it. Planet Northstar's government is serious this time. We wanted to join the fun and participate in the auction. The first item is the Divine Wood Cheer Restoring Pill. Who can afford it? The market price is at least 3 to 400,000 elementary spirit stones. You can't afford it, but that doesn't mean others can't. The big shots in the private rooms above don't care about this thing. There were so many people in the hall. Everyone was talking and it was noisy. Although the cultivators were careful not to speak loudly, there were too many people. No matter how quiet they were, when there were too many people talking, it was still a mess. Everyone's ears were buzzing. Zheng Jiao frowned. She was about to ask everyone to quiet down when a muffled snort came from upstairs. "Shut up, all of you. Don't you know the rules?" The voice wasn't loud, but it sounded like it was right next to their ears. It directly attacked their minds. The weaker cultivators immediately felt dizzy. Some cultivators who weren't even in the chi condensation realm were stunned. For a few seconds, they didn't know what was going on. The voice came from the private room on the third floor. It seemed to be the voice of an old man. It's old man Xian Kong. Someone recognized the owner of the voice and said with a shocked expression. Hearing this name, the cultivators who could withstand the sound wave shrunk their heads. They didn't dare to speak anymore. Old man Xian Kong was the patrol of Planet Northstar. He was an old Yuanying mid-stage cultivator. Many cultivators behind him called him ox-nosed old Taoist. He had a bad temper. Whoever provoked him would suffer. The hall suddenly quieted down. Zheng Jiao glanced at the private room on the third floor and nodded slightly to express her gratitude. Then Zheng Jiao said to the spirit wheat, There are 3 divine with cheer-restoring pills. The starting price is 200,000 elementary spirit stones. The minimum bid is 5,000 elementary spirit stones. The auction starts now. Please make your bids. 210,000. As soon as Zheng Jiao finished speaking, someone raised the sign in his hand. 230,000. As soon as that person paid, someone immediately added 20,000. For a moment, the hall was filled with people calling out bids. It was as if spirit stones were falling from the sky. Soon, the price was raised to 35 elementary spirit stones. This price had already reached the black market price of the divine wood cheer-restoring pill. Any higher, and it wouldn't be worth it. In the end, it was sold for 380,000. The other 2 pills were also sold for close to 400,000 elementary spirit stones. However, they were all from the cultivators on the first floor. No one from the second floor and above made a bid. Just as the previous cultivators said, the big shots in the private rooms weren't interested in the divine wood cheer-restoring pill at all. The next 10+ items up for auction were each more stunning than the previous one. The starting price of the items also rose as a result. The mood of all the cultivators there grew increasingly high, and the auction gradually entered its climax. Everyone's attention was fully focused on the items up for auction, and no one was talking about them in private anymore. The next item was entrusted by a foreign cultivator. It's a golden origin pill. The starting price is 500,000 elementary spirit stones. When the 15th item was placed on the stage, the cultivators on the first floor's hall were all furious. They couldn't wait to pounce on the stage and snatch the golden origin pill that was placed in the spirit array. Geniuses memorized the address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 538. Lin Nuanyu, who was sitting beside Li Daochong, had been quiet since the start of the auction. She didn't seem like a participant, but more like an observer. She just watched silently as the auction items were presented one by one. When the Jinyuan pill appeared, Lin Nuanyu's emotions fluctuated violently. The Jinyuan pill was her only goal in attending the auction. It was the key to whether she could enter the Jin dance stage. For an individual cultivator like Lin Nuanyu, she was lacking in all kinds of cultivation resources. It wasn't easy for her to cultivate to her current level by herself. On the path of cultivation, talent was important, but resources were even more important. Without resources, no matter how talented one was, it was useless. As the old saying goes, even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Those who were extremely talented were the cleverest housewives. If you didn't have rice to cook, what was the use? Moreover, Lin Nuanyu was obviously not a talented person. She was just an ordinary cultivator, so cultivation resources became even more important. After cultivating for so many years, Lin Nuanyu had a certain understanding of herself. Her talent wasn't high, but it wasn't bad either. It wasn't impossible to cultivate to the Jin dance stage, but at least she had to have a normal supply of cultivation resources. If she didn't, Lin Nuanyu would spend the rest of her life in the foundation establishment stage. For a human living in the great cultivation era, the most painful thing wasn't not being able to become a cultivator. It was that when you stepped into the cultivation era and saw the vast sky, you could only stay where you were and couldn't enter that sky. As the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. Those who couldn't enter the foundation establishment stage couldn't see the sky and didn't know what it was like. Knowing but not being able to achieve, it was the greatest pain. Lin Nuanyu had been working hard so that she could one day surpass the foundation establishment stage and become a Jin Dan cultivator. She was at the best age to build her foundation. If she missed it, her time to reach the Jin Dan stage would be greatly delayed. She might not be able to reach the Jin Dan stage by the time she was 40 or 50 years old. If she condensed the Jin Dan when she was 70 or 80 years old, her upper limit would be this, and she would have to live as an old woman for another 100 years. Lin Nuanyu's goal wasn't just Jin Dan. She just hoped to become a Jin Dan cultivator by the time she was 30 years old. Only in this way could he have longer youth and unearth more potential. Looking at the genuine pill placed in a protective spiritual array on the stage, Lin Nuanyu's heartbeat quickened, and she felt a little flustered. There was also a hint of uneasiness and lack of confidence in her gaze. Being short of money was Lin Nuanyu's greatest pain this month. The price of a golden origin pill in the black market was around 1 million elementary spirit stones. Moreover, it was a golden origin pill of poor quality. If it was a 1-star golden origin pill refined by a 1-star alchemist, the price would be 3 times higher. Even 3 million elementary spirit stones might not be enough to buy it. No matter how rich a cultivator was, once he started spending, he would feel like a pauper. Lin Nuanyu had made a lot of preparations for this auction, even though she was already in a serious financial crisis and couldn't make ends meet. However, that was because she hadn't taken out all of her assets. Unless she had no other choice, Lin Nuanyu wouldn't use her assets. That was his last hope. Naturally, he had to save it for the most critical moment. For things like repaying the loan, he could use the money he earned every day. However, for this golden origin pill, Lin Nuanyu took out all of her assets and sold them in the underground city shadow Serene Lane a few days ago. An ancient treasure, a martial arts manual, and a rare 1,000-year-old spiritual herb. Lin Nuanyu sold these 3 items for 3 million beginner-level spirit stones a month. In addition to the little savings she had and the commission Li Daochong received from buying the house, she had a total of 6 million beginner-level spirit stones. That day, Lin Nuanyu wanted to buy a golden origin pill in the underground city's black market. However, she spent 5,000 elementary spirit stones to buy information. In the end, the information she got was that due to the lack of 2 spiritual herbs, the refinement of the golden origin pill had stagnated. It would be difficult to find a supply within 5 years. Even if there was, the price would be higher than usual. If she bought on the black market, she would be squeezed until not even her bones were left. However, the person who sold the information saw that Lin Nuanyu was pitiful and told her 2 additional ways to obtain a golden origin pill. One was to buy it from the black prison. Everything was available there. The other was to hold the first auction at miscellaneous Treasure Street. Lin Nuanyu could forget about going to a place like the black prison. A cultivator at her level would not be able to return. The best outcome was to not be kidnapped and sold by human traffickers. The black prison was a lawless area. It was a paradise for criminals, evil cultivators, ghosts, and lunatics. It was the last barren land of the Great Cultivation Era. For some reason, the 3 great cultivation empires could not do anything about it. It was as if they were afraid of something, but it was also as if they had reached some kind of consensus. In short, it was a barren land of the Hades. It was a barren land of the Hades. Most of the time, humans were scarier than ghosts. No matter what time it was, there would always be such people. Cultivators were also humans, and they were even more powerful. The Black Prison was a gathering place for these terrifying cultivators. Therefore, when the person who sold the information provided 2 suggestions, the one about the Black Jail Planet was as good as nothing to Lin Nuanyu. It wasn't that she didn't know about the Black Jail Planet, but what was the use of knowing about it? Even if she was in the Gene Dance stage, she would not dare to go there, let alone a mere Foundation establishment stage. Obviously, buying this genuine pill at the auction was Lin Nuanyu's only hope. Lin Nuanyu was engrossed in looking at the genuine pill, and her thoughts drifted away. It was only when a loud bid rang out from the area behind her, giving her a shock that she regained her senses. 750,000. In less than a minute, the price had already risen from the starting price of 500,000 to 750,000. This was just some people who wanted to join the fun. The real buyers had not joined in yet. Auctions were complicated, and there were a lot of rules and knowledge. The larger the auction, the more complicated it was. Of course, the most important thing was whether your wallet was big enough. Rich people naturally did not care, but most people were not willing to be taken advantage of. In addition, one could not spend too much money on these items that appeared at the beginning of the auction. If one was really taken advantage of, when better items appeared later on, one's confidence would be reduced, and one might even directly withdraw from the competition. However, the Jinyuan pill was a cultivation pill that was in high demand. It was also a hot item. How to buy it at the most reasonable price was what every cultivator who wanted to buy it had to consider the most. For those cultivators who came for the Jinyuan pill, the last thing they wanted to see was a big shot participating in it. If a big shot appeared, then they would not be able to play. The auction was actually a psychological battle between buyers. They tested each other, competed with each other, and couldn't be too blind. 1,200,000. In the blink of an eye, the price was raised to 1,200,000. Lin Nuanyu clenched her hands tightly, and her palms were sweating. The expression on her pretty face was very nervous. The feeling of wanting something but not being able to get it made her restless. Song Jiao kept changing her gaze on the stage, looking left and right for a while. The appearance of the Jinyuan pill pushed the auction to a small climax. There were many cultivators who wanted to buy the Jinyuan pill, and this was also expected. When the price reached 1,600,000, someone in the private room on the second floor finally started to bid. 1,800,000. The price was raised by 200,000 as soon as he opened his mouth. The cultivators who wanted it in the hall on the first floor suddenly looked gloomy. Many people looked up at the area on the second floor where the price was called. The person who called out the price was none other than Jiang Tai. The Jinyuan pill was one of the Jiang family's targets this time. It wasn't that the Jiang family needed it, but a client of Jiang Tai and from the Ankuan Empire wanted it. This was an item that Jiang Tai was determined to get. This client had a large market share in the Ankuan Empire. Currently, the Jiang family's trade with him was still very small. If he could let this client increase the Jiang family's market share, the Jiang family would be able to double their business. It was very likely that the Jiang family would be able to double their family business in a short period of time. Moreover, the profits that they would be able to reap wouldn't be something that a mere golden yuan pill could compare to. Jiang Taiyan, who had been doing business for most of his life, naturally knew the ropes. Jiang Taiyan also knew that the Jinyuan pill was not an item that those big shots needed. The Jiang family still had enough power to snatch this Jinyuan pill. The price was close to 2 million. This price was already the limit for the cultivators on the first floor. Sung Jiao's eyes moved slightly when she saw that many cultivators were intimidated. 1,800,000 was not the price that she expected, so she immediately said, "Everyone, although this Jinyuan pill's grade is not a one-star Jinyuan pill, it was still made by a master. However, due to the lack of materials, it was not a one-star pill. However, a master is still a master. Even if the ingredients are insufficient, it is still a half-star pill. It's not much worse than a one-star Jinyuan pill. Elder Jiang, you have a good eye." Before Tsang Jiao could finish her words, Jiang Taiyan's face twitched. He felt that the former's praise for him was extremely harsh. This girl was clearly trying to incite people to raise the price. Jiang Taiyan's current bid was to grasp the mentality of the cultivators on the first floor. When the price was raised to a reasonable price, he would suddenly raise the price to scare them. Then, when they were unprepared, he would obtain the item at the critical price. Due to the large number of items in this auction, the pause time after the bidding was shortened. If no one increased the price within 15 seconds, the hammer would be hammered. Jiang Tai had calculated well. He was 50% sure that he could obtain the Jinyuan pill by a psychological warfare. Seng Jiao's introduction instantly shattered his plan. Jiang Tai took a deep look at Song Jiao, but there was nothing he could do. The Jiang family couldn't touch the people of the Shadow Serene house. After Tsang Jiao finished speaking, she inadvertently looked up at Jiang Tai on the second floor and smiled at him. Her smile was bright, but also a little treacherous. Li Daochong sat below the stage and looked at Tsang Jiao on the stage. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. He didn't expect Miss Song to have such a cunning side. During his previous contact with her, Li Daochong had some doubts about whether she was good at doing business. Every time, she let him take advantage of her. Now it seemed that Tsang Jiao did it on purpose. Her purpose was very simple. She just wanted to get on his good side. 1,850,000. Tsang Jiao was about to bid 1,800,000 once, but someone had already bid. Lin Nuanyu finally spoke. Jiang Tai. Anne's gaze immediately turned in the direction of the bid. When he saw Lin Nuanyu, he felt a little strange. However, he quickly saw Li Daochong sitting beside Lin Nuanyu. Wasn't this guy in the private room on the second floor? Why was he sitting down here? Grandpa, this guy beat me and Jiang ton up this afternoon because of Lin Nuanyu, Jiang Ronghua whispered to Jiang Tai. Jiang Tai, Anne's old face twitched. He glanced at Jiang Ronghua. Wasn't it this guy in private room 222 just now? Jiang Ronghua nodded. Yes, Jiang Tai said coldly. That Lin girl can't be deliberately picking a fight with me, right? Jiang Ronghua added fuel to the fire. Grandpa, it's very possible. Jiang Tai glared at Jiang Ronghua and wanted to kick him down the stairs. It's all your fault. Did you also leak the news that I wanted to buy the Jinyuan pill? Jiang Ronghua shrunk his head and said with a sad face, Grandpa, I swear I didn't leak a single word. Jiang Tai glanced at Huang Yuelong, who was sitting on the sofa behind him and talking to his daughter, Huang Jiron. He lowered his voice and said to Jiang Ronghua, You can't do anything right, but you're good at ruining things. Do you think Grandpa doesn't know what you've done outside? Who knows if you drank too much spirit wine and let it slip, or if you bragged to some female cultivator in bed? Let me tell you, after you marry that girl, you'd better behave yourself. Although the Huang family is a family on a fourth-class cultivation planet, the Huang family is a family of officials and has deep connections. If you do anything stupid after marriage and the Huang family finds out, even Grandpa won't be able to protect you. The Huang family has countless ways to deal with you. Yes, Grandpa. Jiang Ronghua lowered his head and said, Jiang Tai, and left a look of exasperation in his eyes before he turned to look below. He immediately made a bid. 2,200,000. Almost as soon as Jiang Tai finished speaking, Lin Nuanyu firmly raised the price again and raised it by another 200,000. Lin Nuanyu was going all out. She had a total of 2,600,000, so she could at most raise it to 2,600,000. Instead of raising it bit by bit, she might as well do it quickly and scare people. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.